Chapter 1063. Massacre Destruction Bang Bang Bang. The four martial emperors' attacks came crashing down. However, the murderous aura from the massacre abstinence violation blade had already wrapped around Zhuowen. Hence, the four attacks were all blocked by the murderous aura. Oh, what's going on? That emperor weapon is emitting such a terrifying murderous aura. Supreme Jin and the other three frowned when they saw this. They came to a halt and stared at Zhuowen, who was wrapped in murderous aura, in astonishment. Let's blast this murderous aura apart. I don't care what tricks he has up his sleeves. Can't we break it apart if we join forces? Supreme Jin coldly snorted. He then took a step forward and immediately charged towards the gathering murderous aura. The other three nodded and followed behind Supreme Jin. The power in their bodies rose to the maximum as they prepared to kill Zhuowen at any time. The four of them arrived at the core of the murderous aura. At this moment, the blood-colored murderous aura surged and gathered, forming a blood-colored vortex. Zhuowen's figure was faintly discernible within the vortex. Blast open the murderous aura and kill this little bastard. Supreme Jin instructed before he made the first move. He reached out with his right hand, and the 9 golden orbs immediately surged with violent star energy and gathered in the center of his palm. The blazing golden light made it seem as if a small golden sun was being nurtured in his palm. The other three also mobilized their star energy, intending to use their full strength to break open the blood-colored vortex and kill Zhuowen, who was hidden within. Boom boom boom. 4 rays of star energy blasted out, and a heavenly might filled the air. However, the 4 of them frowned because their attacks felt as if they had fallen into a swamp and could not break through at all. At this moment Zhuowen, who was deep within the blood-colored vortex, slowly opened his eyes. His gaze was filled with confusion, because all he could see was the color of blood. Where am I? Zhuowen instinctively asked. Kid, I let go of the slaughtering abstinence violation saber. This dragon lord has already gone all out. I completely released the spiritual sense of the scarlet-clad monk that I collected last time. Since these 4 fellows are still haunting you, I might as well teach them a lesson they will remember well. Xiao He came before Zhuowen and said with a gloomy expression, this monk was a high-level martial emperor. Even if it was just a strand of his divine sense, it was still as vast as the ocean. It would be of great benefit to Xiao He. Initially, Xiao He had planned to slowly absorb this divine sense. Unfortunately, her plan could not keep up with the changes. Supreme Jin and the others were like sticky candy as they pestered Zhuowen relentlessly, determined to kill him. Xiao He could not possibly let Zhuowen die, so she had no choice but to use the power of the blood-red monk's divine sense. Didn't you say that you had erased the divine thoughts of the monk in bloody garments? I didn't expect you to collect them yourself. Zhuowen was stunned and then snorted coldly. Xiao He smiled awkwardly and said, the power of this monk's divine sense is not small. It is a great supplement for this dragon lord. Unfortunately, I have no choice but to use it now. Kid, quickly let go of the slaughtering abstinence violation saber. The divine sense of the monk in bloody garments is about to appear. This is the divine sense of a high-level martial emperor. The power it can unleash is extremely terrifying. Zhuowen nodded and gently let go of his right hand. Instantly, the slaughtering abstinence violation saber buzzed and shot out from the center of the blood-colored vortex. The 4 people who were watching from outside the blood-colored vortex suddenly felt a chill run down their spines. Soon after, the slaughtering abstinence violation saber broke through the vortex and slashed towards Emperor Feng. Emperor Feng was the weakest among the 4. His cultivation was only at the first level of the martial emperor realm. How dare you attack me? You're courting death. Looking at the blood-colored abstinence violation saber, Emperor Feng was not afraid. Instead, his eyes were filled with greed. Previously, the power of the blood-colored abstinence violation saber was very weak. Therefore, Emperor Feng was not afraid of the slaughtering abstinence violation saber. Wind! Emperor Feng roared, and his hands began to gather a frenzied hurricane. The 9 stars above his head were formed by an extremely powerful hurricane and contained traces of the law of wind. Swoosh! The slaughtering abstinence violation saber turned into a demonic crimson light. Although it was still a few hundred meters away, it arrived in front of Emperor Feng in the blink of an eye. Emperor Feng was still gathering the power of wind slowly, and he did not expect danger to approach him. When the slaughtering abstinence violation saber arrived in front of him, Emperor Feng realized that something was amiss. He raised his head and saw the slaughtering abstinence violation saber in front of him. What's going on? Why is the speed of the slaughtering abstinence violation saber so fast? Emperor Feng's eyes narrowed and he roared. He raised his hands, and the incomplete power of wind surged out in an attempt to block the saber. However, there was not the slightest hint of anxiety in Emperor Feng's eyes. He was well aware of the power of the slaughtering abstinence violation saber. It would be difficult for it to hurt him. Therefore, he was not very concerned about the attack from the slaughtering abstinence violation saber. Crack! However, when the slaughtering abstinence violation saber arrived in front of the power of wind could not withstand a single blow, and was instantly broken. Then, the crimson light transformed and pierced through Emperor Feng's forehead. Swoosh! A stream of blood spurted out. Emperor Feng's eyes were wide open in anger as he looked up at the sky. Blood flowed out from his forehead like a broken dam. How is this possible? Why has the power of the slaughtering abstinence violation saber increased so much? I can't accept this. Emperor Feng roared, and his physical body finally collapsed. Immediately, the nascent soul in his dantian rushed out of his physical body and headed towards Emperor Jin. Emperor Jin, save me! Emperor Feng's terrified voice rang out. Unfortunately, Emperor Feng's nascent soul did not rush out for long. Another crimson light flashed past and pierced through his nascent soul. Crimson energy filled the air, and Emperor Feng's nascent soul immediately collapsed and dissipated. Everything happened too quickly. From the collapse of Emperor Feng's physical body to the destruction of his nascent soul, it all happened in an instant. Emperor Feng, a first heaven emperor, had fallen just like that? Emperor Feng is dead? Before Emperor Jin, Emperor Lan, and Emperor Qing could regain their senses, they saw Emperor Feng's nascent soul completely dissipate in front of their eyes. A martial emperor had fallen just like that in front of them. Whoosh! After killing Emperor Feng's nascent soul, the slaughtering abstinence violation saber turned into a crimson light and returned to the crimson vortex. At this moment, Zhuowen had already walked out of the crimson vortex. The crimson vortex began to churn and eventually formed a human figure. It was a monk dressed in crimson robes. His eyes were as deep as the sea and carried a trace of indifference towards the world. The Buddha is the heart, and the heart is the Buddha. The heart and the Buddha are objects. If one knows that there are no objects and no heart, then one is a true Dharmakaya Buddha. The monk in crimson robes spat out a faint Buddhist proverb. Soon after, the corners of the monk's lips slowly curled into a demonic smile. He gently reached out with his right hand and grabbed the slaughtering abstinence violation saber. All things in the world are massacres. If there is no end to all things, there will be no end to massacres. If you want to stop massacres, the only way is to kill all things. To become a Buddha, one must kill. As soon as he spoke, the monk in crimson robes glanced indifferently at Zhuowen behind him. He then turned his gaze towards Emperor Jin and the other two in front of him. The murderous aura on his body grew denser and denser. The divine consciousness of an emperor weapon? This kid actually has the divine consciousness of an emperor weapon on him. Damn it! The expressions of Emperor Jin and the other two changed when they saw the monk in crimson robes formed from the murderous aura. They knew that Zhuowen's crimson abstinence violation saber was a high-level emperor weapon. In other words, the monk in crimson robes should have been a high-level emperor when he was alive. Although it was only a trace of divine consciousness, it was extremely terrifying when paired with a high-level emperor weapon. Initially, Emperor Jin and the others thought that Zhuowen had obtained the crimson abstinence violation saber by chance. They thought that it was impossible for it to possess the divine consciousness of its previous owner. However, they were wrong. Very wrong. An emperor has fallen. Isn't this a little too crazy? After Emperor Feng was killed by the slaughtering abstinence violation saber, the 9 stars that represented Emperor Feng fell from the sky and crashed heavily into the wilderness hundreds of miles away from West Path City. And the fall of a star naturally represented the fall of an emperor realm expert. Many of the martial artists in West Slope City were still aware of this. Therefore, when the Wind Emperor fell, West Slope City began to fall into chaos. Kill. The divine consciousness of the monk in crimson robes was released by Xiaohei. Therefore, he naturally obeyed Xiaohei's orders. He took a step forward and charged towards Emperor Jin and the other two, intending to fight the three of them alone. What should we do, Emperor Jin? This divine consciousness is not easy to deal with. Emperor Qing and Emperor Lan stood behind Emperor Jin and said in a low voice, "Fight! We must kill that little bastard Zhuowen today. Although this monk was a high-level emperor when he was alive, he is only a trace of divine consciousness now. The three of us have nothing to fear at all. Let's kill him together." Emperor Jin snorted coldly. Emperor Lan nodded. He had the same intention. He did not want to let Zhuowen go either. Emperor Qing's eyes flickered. Emperor Qing was much calmer than Emperor Jin and Emperor Lan. He felt that the monk in crimson robes was not ordinary and was already on his guard. Kill. Supreme Jin roared angrily and took the lead to charge forward. Supreme Lan followed closely behind him, while Supreme Qing quietly retreated and did not charge forward. Killing is the only way to prove one's Tao. All of you will be my stepping stones. The blood-robed monk mumbled to himself. Soon after, he slashed out with his exterminating oath-breaking blade. 1,000-foot-long blade light stretched across the void like a heavenly pillar that pierced through the heavens and earth, as it shot towards Supreme Jin and Supreme Lan. Emperor Jin and Emperor Lan's expressions changed drastically. They quickly used their strongest moves in an attempt to block the 1,000-foot-long blade light. Boom boom boom. The 18 stars around them turned into a Milky Way realm, protecting them firmly in the center. For a moment, they managed to block the terrifying blood-red blade light. Killing is breaking the Buddhist precepts. Breaking the Buddhist precepts is enlightenment. Destruction of life. The monk in crimson robes mumbled again. He gently raised the blade in his hand. Instantly, bloody scenes appeared in the void. These bloody scenes were scenes of slaughter. Some of them were beasts, some of them were people, some of them were soul beasts. The various forms of slaughter in the world were fully interpreted by this blade. The murderous oath-breaking blade was to kill all living things and destroy all obstacles. Bang bang bang. Supreme Jin and Supreme Emperor Lan's celestial river domain crumbled the moment the annihilation technique was unleashed. The two Emperor Realm powerhouses did not even have the chance to grunt before they exploded into two clouds of blood mist. Let's go! Chapter 1064. Seclusion so powerful. Zhuowen's jaw dropped as he watched Supreme Jin and Supreme Lan explode into a mist of blood. His eyes were filled with shock. Supreme Jin and Supreme Lan were both level 3 martial emperors. Two martial emperors had fallen just like that. This is a high-level martial emperor's move. Furthermore, it was executed with the help of the monk's divine sense. Naturally, its power is extraordinary. Supreme Jin and Supreme Lan are only low-level martial emperors. It's normal for them to not be a match for him. Xiaohei stood on Zhuowen's shoulder, a look of pity in her eyes as she said, "Divine sense can only be used once. After this, the divine sense will disappear." What a pity. Zhuowen nodded. Xiaohei was right. The divine sense of an emperor could only be released once. After that, it would dissipate. It was similar to the divine sense of the first-generation sect leader of the Xiao Yao sword sect. When the time came, it would dissipate. That Azure Emperor is really fast at escaping. He didn't even try to catch up. He just escaped. Zhuowen muttered to himself with some pity. What's a pity? With your talent, you'll be able to catch up to Supreme Emperor Qing after staying in the Divine Academy for a while. When that time comes, you can return to the Qing Xian Empire and kill Supreme Emperor Qing with your own hands. Xiaohei said, I was lucky this time. If not for the monk's divine sense, I wouldn't have been able to escape so easily. Zhuowen's eyes darkened. He had miscalculated this time. Xiaohei nodded. You're still too weak. You should go into seclusion when you return. You have many good things with you. You should be able to exchange them for enough contribution points. When the time comes, you'll cultivate in the cultivation pagoda for a while. Your strength should slowly increase. Even if something like this happens again, you won't be in such a sorry state like today. Hearing this, the corners of Zhuo Wen's mouth revealed a trace of a bitter smile. Xiaohe was right. His current strength was indeed too weak. He had to make the best use of his time to improve his cultivation. Moreover, he had obtained many good things this time. After all, Zhuowen had obtained Supreme Jin, Supreme Lan, and Supreme Feng's spiritual rings. When the time comes, he could exchange them for enough contribution points for him to cultivate in the cultivation pagoda. However, although there were many good things in the three martial emperor's spiritual rings, there were no martial emperor weapons. It seemed like not every martial emperor realm martial artist could have martial emperor weapons. Let's go. When I return this time, I will immediately go into seclusion. If my cultivation does not reach the Empyrean realm, I will not come out. Zhuowen muttered in a low voice as a sharp glint appeared in his eyes. Zhuowen knew very well that if his cultivation could reach the heavenly venerate realm, his battle prowess would definitely be terrifying. At the very least, it would far surpass some of the ordinary heavenly venerates in the outer court. Whoosh! Thinking of this, Zhuowen took a step forward and turned into a stream of light as he left West Path City. Many martial artists in West Path City were still in shock. 4 martial emperors had joined forces to attack a mysterious martial artist. In the end, 3 of them had died and 1 had escaped. This result was enough to make any martial artists in West Path City dumbfounded. Who is this person? After the shock, a trace of doubt rose in the minds of all the martial artists in West Path City. Who was this mysterious young man? Some sharp-eyed martial artists recognized that Zhuowen was the young man who had killed the sect master of the Xiaoyao sect. Although many martial artists in West Path City had witnessed the battle between the sect master of the Xiaoyao sect and Zhuowen with their own eyes, no one knew the name Zhuowen. This young man had appeared in West Path City inexplicably. After that, he had caused a commotion and left without leaving a trace. Later on, the original legends about the sect master of the Xiaoyao sect in West Path City were replaced by this mysterious young man. Many martial artists in West Path City no longer talked about the sect master of the Xiaoyao sect in their free time, but the mysterious young man who had killed the sect master of the Xiaoyao sect and caused the deaths of 3 martial emperors. The rumors about the mysterious young man eventually spread in West Path City. In the end, everyone spread false rumors and deified the mysterious young man. Of course, this was all in the future. Whoosh! There was the sound of something breaking through the air. Zhuowen had returned to the outer courtyard of the main city. Mo Lingtian, Jia Nan, and the other 2 were waiting at the entrance of the academy. When they saw Zhuowen had returned, the 4 of them relaxed. When Zhuowen had asked them to leave first, they felt that something was wrong. There might be some hidden danger in West Path City. Therefore, the 4 of them were worried about Zhuowen's safety. However, now that Zhuowen had returned safely, the 4 of them were completely relieved. Brother Zhua, did you encounter any trouble on your way back? Mo Lingtian greeted him with a smile. No trouble at all. Zhuowen smiled. He did not plan to tell anyone about what had happened with Supreme Jin and the other 3. Although he had a good relationship with Mo Lingtian and the other 3, things would become very troublesome if they found out that the blood-red Buddhist commandment blade in Zhuowen's possession was capable of killing emperor-level experts. If news of this were to spread, no one knew who would covet his blood-red Buddhist commandment blade. Therefore, Zhuowen chose to avoid talking about it. After all, the massacre commandment blade was a high-tier emperor weapon. If news of it were to spread, it would only be disadvantageous to him. Mo Lingtian and the other 3 nodded. They did not doubt Zhuowen's words. Brother Zhua, I want to increase my strength. I want to become a true expert. Jianan suddenly arrived in front of Zhuowen and said with a serious look in her eyes. Jianan, you mean? Zhuowen was stunned and asked, my sister and I are preparing to go into closed-door cultivation. We will only come out of closed-door cultivation when our cultivation levels have reached the refined state. Therefore, we may not appear for a very long time. Jianan suddenly said. Gatha also came to his side with a determined look in her eyes. After the incident at the Carefree sect, Jianan and Gatha deeply felt that they were not powerful enough. This time, they were determined to go into closed-door cultivation. Zhuowen nodded. Jianan and Gatha were very talented. In fact, in a sense, they were even more powerful than Zhuowen. After all, they were still very young. If they were given time to settle down, their cultivation levels would definitely improve by leaps and bounds. All right, when you come out of closed-door cultivation, remember to contact me through the communication jade talisman. That way, I will know that you're done with your closed-door cultivation. Zhuowen nodded and smiled. Of course. Jianan nodded heavily. Oh, these are the channel opening pills that I obtained from this mission. They are quite beneficial to the tempering of one's meridians. There are 4 of them here. The 4 of you can take them. Zhuowen suddenly thought of something. With a flick of his right hand, he took out a brocade box and took out 4 jade-colored pills. He handed them to Imo Lingtian, Jianan and the other 2. Channel opening pills? Jianan, Imo Lingtian and the other 2's eyes lit up. They looked at the jade-colored pills in their palms excitedly, as they mumbled to themselves. Big brother Zhua, many thanks. We won't waste time on pleasantries. We will remember your feelings for us in our hearts. We also plan to go into closed-door cultivation this time. We will take our leave now. Jianan nodded heavily at Zhuowen. Soon after, he led Gatha and Xing towards the academy. Brother Imo, what about you? Zhuowen turned his head and looked at Imo Lingtian with a smile. I plan to do some missions and earn some contribution points. After that, I will enter the cultivation tower to cultivate for a period of time. I am too weak. Compared to you, I am nothing. Imo Lingtian said with a bitter smile. Originally, his cultivation was much higher than Zhuowen's. However, he was now at the initial stage of the Golden Exalted stage, while Zhuowen was also at the initial stage of the Golden Exalted stage. The latter had surpassed him in cultivation in such a short period of time. This made him feel even more pressured. In addition to Zhuowen's terrifying battle strength, Imo Lingtian could only smile bitterly in his heart. However, at the same time, it also inspired him to become stronger. After all, the pressure that Zhuowen gave him could also be used as motivation. Zhuowen nodded. After the incident at the Unfettered Sect, Imo Lingtian, Jianan and the others realized that they were not strong enough. Zhuowen was also the same. Especially after being surrounded by Supreme Jin and the other 3, Zhuowen could not wait to increase his strength. Let's work hard together. I also plan to go into closed-door cultivation for a period of time. I hope that I can use this time to break through to the Heavenly Exalted stage. Zhuowen said with a faint smile. The 2 of them chatted for a while more before they went their separate ways. After all, everyone had their own cultivation methods, and it was impossible to unify them. Therefore, they naturally cultivated separately. After returning to the academy, Zhuowen went to the 2nd level of the mission point. This time, he did not go there to accept missions. Instead, he wanted to exchange them for contribution points. Currently, he had the spiritual rings of Supreme Jin, Supreme Lan and Supreme Feng. There were many precious spiritual treasures, armor skills and other miscellaneous items in them. If he exchanged these items for contribution points, it would be a considerable amount of wealth. It would be enough for Zhuowen to cultivate in the cultivation pagoda for a long time. When Zhuowen brought the spiritual rings of the 3 supreme emperors to Bei Xian to exchange them for contribution points, Bei Xian was completely shocked. This was because all the items that Zhuowen brought were worth more than 1 million contribution points. Zhuo Xiaoyu, you've struck it rich. You actually managed to get so many good items. Could it be that you've robbed an Emperor Realm expert? Bei Xian looked at Zhuowen strangely. After all, the items that Zhuowen brought out were beyond his expectations. This was not something that a mere Golden Exalted could take out. That was why Bei Xian said that. Zhuowen rubbed his nose and laughed awkwardly. Senior Bei Xian, you're overthinking it. With my strength, how could I rob an Supreme Emperor? These items were obtained by chance. It's not worth mentioning. Hearing this, Bei Xian pulled out his face. These items were worth more than 1 million contribution points. However, Zhuowen said that they were not worth mentioning. He wanted to give Zhuowen a slap. However, Zhuowen's words were obviously perfunctory. Bei Xian knew that Zhuowen did not want to talk about the origins of these items. Therefore, Bei Xian was smart enough not to ask. After all, everyone had their own secrets. This was a personal matter, and it was not good to ask about it. After obtaining more than 1 million contribution points, Zhuowen exchanged them for some arcane secret manuals and materials. Then he left the second level under Bei Xian's strange gaze. Chapter 1065. General trend of massacre. The flow of people in the cultivation tower was still quite terrifying. Zhuowen arrived in front of the counter of the Cheongsam lady from before. The latter also recognized Zhuowen, and a trace of caution appeared in her beautiful eyes. At the same time, she was constantly sneaking glances at Zhuowen. During this period of time, Zhuowen's deeds could be considered to have truly spread in the outer court. As a new student, he snatched the contribution points of the older students. Later on, he even fought with the famous genius of the Emperor Pavilion, Lu Xiang, and defeated the latter. It could be said to have caused a sensation for a period of time. It was even rumored that Zhuowen was hailed as the strongest new student in the history of the outer court. It was very likely that he would squeeze into the outer court heavenly sovereign ranking in a short period of time. With so many halos surrounding Zhuowen, the Cheongsam lady was naturally incomparably cautious. Her heart even surged with a trace of peculiarity in her beautiful eyes. After all, the future of this young man in front of her was definitely limitless. If she could rely on such a monstrous genius, there would be many benefits for her. Junior, we meet again. The Cheongsam lady's voice was somewhat nervous. Her tender fists were clenched tightly as her pair of beautiful eyes stared intently at Zhuowen. Yes, this time, I will have to trouble Senior again. Please help me open a private room on the 10th floor of the cultivation tower for half a year. I need to cultivate there for a period of time. The corner of Zhuowen's mouth slightly raised as he said with a faint smile. Looking at Zhuowen's casual expression, a trace of sadness flashed across the Cheongsam lady's beautiful eyes. However, she seemed to have thought of something and said with some shock, Junior, you intend to open a private room on the 10th floor for half a year? That would require 216,000 contribution points. Zhuowen nodded and said, Yes, I do intend to stay on the 10th floor for half a year. Looking at the expression on Zhuowen's face, the Cheongsam lady knew that the former was serious. Her jade-like hand lightly tapped on the counter and a screen popped out. After opening a private room on the 10th floor for half a year, she took out a jade key and handed it to Zhuowen. After receiving the jade key, Zhuowen paid the corresponding contribution points. After bidding farewell to the Cheongsam lady, he walked towards the 10th floor of the cultivation tower. Looking at the back of the figure disappearing on the stairs, the Cheongsam lady's beautiful eyes were somewhat gloomy. A trace of a bitter smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. She was very clear about the gap between her and Zhuowen. She was afraid that she did not even have the qualifications to rely on the latter. Junior Zhuowen is getting stronger and stronger. It's only been a little over a month, and he's already able to earn so many contribution points, the Cheongsam woman muttered in a low voice. Her beautiful eyes filled with envy. Arriving at the living room of the 10th floor, Zhuowen saw many figures sitting in the living room. Obviously, they were also cultivators who had come to freeload on the ice and fire energy. Zhuowen even saw many familiar faces. These familiar faces were the cultivators who had been sitting here when he first entered the 10th floor. It's Zhuowen? Low cries rang out. Many people who were close to Zhuowen quietly distanced themselves from him. A month ago, the fate of the three Ling brothers and Lu Xiang was unforgettable. This Zhuowen was simply a fiend. Whoever provoked him would be unlucky. Feeling the fear in the eyes of the other cultivators in the room, the corner of Zhuowen's mouth slightly curled. He did not pay too much attention to them. He took out a jade key and walked towards the corresponding private room's stone door. He opened the stone door and walked in. Half a year. Zhuowen needed to use this half a year to make a big breakthrough in his strength. It would be best if he could raise it to the heavenly sovereign realm. The energy in the cultivation tower is rich. Cultivating here is at least 10 times faster than the outside world. Zhuowen slowly walked to the praying mat in the middle of the private room and sat down. He took a deep breath, and inhaled the rich energy in the surroundings into his chest. A trace of pleasure flashed across his eyes. Kid, what are your plans for the next half a year? Inside the cultivation room, Xiaohe appeared in front of Zhuowen without any scruples. She crossed her paws and asked in an indifferent tone, I'll raise my strength first. Also, the techniques I have are too heterogeneous. I plan to integrate some of them. Zhuowen said with a smile, You're right. Your techniques are indeed too heterogeneous. Although they're quite powerful, you're unable to unleash their full potential. If you can integrate all these techniques, you'll definitely be able to unleash an extremely powerful force. Xiaohe nodded. Let the little fellow out first. This cultivation room contains ice and fire energy. The ice energy within will be of great help to the little fellow's strength. Zhuowen waved his right hand, and the profound soul ice butterfly immediately appeared in front of him. Soon after, it intimately rubbed itself against Zhuowen's chest, its eyes filled with dependence. Zhuowen patted the little fellow's head and instructed it. The little fellow reluctantly flew to the side of the cultivation room, where the ice energy was rich. It began to absorb the rich ice energy in the cultivation room, and began to cultivate by itself. A trace of satisfaction appeared in Zhuowen's eyes, as he watched the profound soul ice butterfly quietly absorbing the ice energy. The profound soul ice butterfly's cultivation was currently at the peak of the Xuanzun realm. It should be able to make a breakthrough soon. If the profound soul ice butterfly's cultivation could reach the golden sovereign level, it would be of great help to the current Zhuowen. However, all of this required the profound soul ice butterfly's cultivation to make a breakthrough. After withdrawing his gaze, Zhuowen flicked his finger and took out the slaughtering oath-breaking blade from his spirit ring. His eyes flickered as he said, This slaughtering oath-breaking blade contains an extremely powerful slaughtering chi. It faintly matches the aura of my Azura blood spear. Perhaps I can combine the two together. The Tao of slaughter is different and leads to the same destination. If you can combine the two together, relying on the might of a high-grade emperor weapon, like the slaughtering oath-breaking blade, you'll be able to control the power of the world. It will definitely be much more powerful than your Azura blood spear. However, you're an expert with a spear. If you switch to using a blade now, you might not be able to get used to it at first. Xiaohe nodded in agreement. All the weapons in the world lead to the same destination. As long as I can control the power of the world, I'll be able to switch between spear and blade aura at will. Zhuowen's eyes shone brightly as he said. In fact, Zhuowen had long realized that his methods were too heterogeneous. If he could combine them, he would definitely have the power to transform. However, he didn't have much time before. Now that he had calmed down, Zhuowen could study these things properly. You brat, you're quite creative. Xiaohe opened her mouth, but found that she had no words to refute Zhuowen's words. She could only say this in embarrassment. Let's try it first. After all, this is just my idea. Whether it will work or not, we'll only know after we put it into practice. Zhuowen shook his head and sat cross-legged on the praying mat. As he guided the surrounding ice and fire energy into his body to refine his meridians, he silently comprehended the slaughter origin within the slaughter abstinence violation blade. At the same time, Zhuowen also began to silently circulate the Azura blood spear aura within his body in an attempt to combine the two. Time was like a wild horse that had escaped its reins. A month passed in the blink of an eye. At this moment, Zhuowen was sitting cross-legged on the praying mat. Blood surged out from his body, making him look extremely terrifying and ferocious. Whoosh! Zhuowen suddenly opened his eyes. Suddenly, a blood-red thread faintly appeared in his eyes. This blood-red thread ran from the corner of his eyes to the end of his eyes, like a bloody slit. It looked extremely strange. Slaughter. Aura. With a soft chant, Zhuowen suddenly took a step forward. Waves of blood-red aura surged out and filled the entire cultivation room. For a moment, it was as if a monstrous sea of blood had filled the entire cultivation room. Xiaohe looked at Zhuowen's bloodshot eyes with interest and chuckled. Is this another kind of aura of the heavens and earth that you've comprehended by combining the Azura blood spear aura and the slaughter origin? Whoosh! Zhuowen nodded slightly. Immediately, The terrifying slaughter aura around him vanished. Zhuowen also recovered his calmness and said, "Yes. However, the slaughter aura that I've comprehended is still not perfect. I still need to practice it properly. Moreover, this slaughter aura is very compatible with the demonic slaughter Tao. When I use this slaughter aura in my demonic state, its power will increase by many times. The demonic slaughter Tao is different, but it leads to the same destination. You have many techniques that are related to slaughter. You can combine them and fuse them into a more powerful technique. The power of your slaughter aura is not bad. It's much stronger than the Azura Blood Spear aura." Xiaohe nodded and praised. "After you've completely comprehended the slaughter origin, you can study Buddhism and raise the power of Buddhism to the extreme. At that time, you'll be able to comprehend the power of the demonic Buddha. I'm afraid that at that time, your strength will increase by hundreds or thousands." Hearing this, Zhuowen chuckled and joked, "Xiaohe, when will your dragon soul materialization be able to display its powerful effects?" Xiaohe was startled and immediately said, "Don't worry. This dragon lord's strength will not disappoint you. After you've truly advanced to the Emperor realm, the complete dragon soul materialization will have powerful dragon skills. At that time, you'll know the true strength of a dragon soul." Dragon skills? Zhuowen's eyes revealed a trace of contemplation. He was rather looking forward to the so-called dragon skills. After all, Xiaohe's body was not simple. If he could display the power of the dragon skills, it would be terrifying. You can continue to cultivate. There are still 5 months left in the cultivation room. There's still some knowledge about origin arrays. If you want to enter the arcane tower, you must master the necessary arcane knowledge. Otherwise, it's useless even if you have powerful mental strength. Xiaohe instructed and did not speak anymore. Instead, he silently landed on the soul ice butterfly in the corner and sat on it, absorbing the ice and fire energy in the cultivation room. After all, the cultivation room was sealed with the more powerful ice-fire holy symbol's origin. There was always a trace of the holy symbol's origin aura in the ice and fire energy. This kind of origin aura was of great help to Xiaohe. Chapter 1066. Someone from the inner yard cultivation knew no time, and half a year passed very quickly. Within the cultivation room, besides occasionally cultivating his origin energy, Zhuowen spent the rest of his time comprehending the slaughter force and studying arcane origin formations. After more than half a year, Zhuowen's slaughter momentum had become more and more perfect, and its power was also extraordinary. Just by releasing the slaughter momentum, its power was no weaker than Zhuowen's strength when he was in the first layer of bedevilment. Moreover, if Zhuowen used the massacre momentum in the bedevilment state, its power would increase by several times. This was because the massacre momentum was compatible with the massacre demon path. When the two were combined, its power would naturally become more and more terrifying. As for the origin array, Zhuowen had completely surpassed Little White's level. Although Zhuowen had studied the basics of origin array in Rattan Armor City, he could only refine a third-grade origin array at most. If other arcanists knew that Zhuowen could only refine a third-grade origin array with his mind power at the perfect fifth-grade origin array, they would definitely mock him. In the past half a year, Zhuowen's understanding of the fourth-grade origin array had deepened a lot. After all, his mind power had reached the perfect fifth-grade origin array. Many things were easy to understand, but it was still difficult to refine a fifth-grade origin array now. However, Zhuowen believed that if he was given another 2 months, with his powerful mind power, he should be able to perfectly comprehend the refining method of the fifth-grade origin array. Half a year has passed so quickly. It's a pity that I haven't broken through to the heavenly venerate level. I've only reached the peak of the golden venerate level. Zhuowen muttered to himself as he slowly got up. He originally thought that after cultivating in the cultivation tower for half a year, he should be able to smoothly break through to the celestial master realm. However, it seemed that he was still a little short. Whoosh! At this moment, the dark soul ice butterfly opened its eyes and landed obediently beside Zhuowen. It circled around Zhuowen intimately like a lively child. Xiaohe, who was lying lazily on the dark soul ice butterfly, laughed and said, You have gained a lot in the past half a year. The massacre momentum has been completely integrated into your bones. Your strength is probably much more terrifying than before. If you meet Lu Xiang again, you should be able to defeat her in one move." The corner of Zhuo Wen's mouth curled up slightly. He said, "There are still many things that can be developed in the force of massacre, such as the demonic Tao of massacre, the power of the blood demon, and so on. They can all be fused into the force of massacre and become even more terrifying." Yes, there's a lot of room for improvement in your slaughter momentum. If you study it properly, its power will definitely increase slowly. However, it's already strong enough. With your cultivation at the peak of the Golden Venerable Realm, your combat strength is comparable to a peak Celestial Master. If you use the Massacre Oath-Breaking Blade, your strength will increase by a lot. Although you may not be a match for the Celestial Master monster in the outer court, the difference won't be too great. Xiao He said logically. The Massacre Oath-Breaking Blade is a high-grade Emperor weapon. It is better not to use it casually. It will easily attract the attention of others. It is more suitable to use royal-level spiritual treasures in the future. Zhuowen muttered to himself. You are right. You have a lot of contribution points. When the time comes, you can use your task points to exchange for a spiritual treasure. When the time comes, even if you don't use the Massacre Oath-Breaking Blade, the power of the Massacre Oath-Breaking Blade technique won't be too weak. Xiao He agreed. Let's leave the cultivation tower first. At the same time, I plan to participate in the Arcana test and enter the Arcana Tower. I must meet the owner of the Arcana Tower, Mu Feng. With that, Zhuowen pushed open the stone door and walked out of the private room. Why is there no one in the living room? After walking out of the private room, Zhuowen was surprised to find that the living room on the 10th floor, which was usually packed with people, was now deserted. This strange phenomenon immediately attracted Zhuowen's attention. Although he was puzzled in his heart, he did not pay too much attention to it, and directly walked down from the 10th floor of the cultivation tower. At this moment, there were very few people in the living room on the first floor of the cultivation tower. Other than the staff at the counter, there were only a few people. After walking to the counter where the Chongsam lady was, Zhuowen returned the jade key to the private room to her and casually asked, "Senior sister, why are there so few people in the cultivation tower today? It is not like this normally." After the Chongsam lady kept the jade key, she looked at Zhuowen with some astonishment. Soon after, she remembered that Zhuowen had just come out of the cultivation room. Her eyes revealed a look of relief as she softly said, "Junior brother, you may not know, but it seems that someone from the inner court came today." "Oh, someone from the inner court came?" Zhuowen's pupil shrunk slightly as a ripple rose in his heart. He continued to ask, "Senior sister, do you know why someone from the inner court came?" The Chongsam lady shook her head and said, "I am not sure about this. After all, this news has just spread in the academy. Many students in the academy have gathered there one after another, in order to catch a glimpse of the person from the inner court. As for what exactly is going on, there is currently no news. However, people from the inner court rarely come to the outer court. Since they have come, there must be something important. Unfortunately, I have work to do, and it is not convenient for me to go out now. Junior brother, if you have the opportunity, you can go out and ask around." Zhuowen nodded his head. He was somewhat curious in his heart. He did not know why someone from the inner court suddenly came to the outer court. Let's first go to the task points to exchange for a blade-type soul treasure. With a trace of curiosity in his heart, Zhuowen ultimately decided to go to the task points to exchange for a blade-type soul treasure. After passing through a few corridors and passageways, Zhuowen quickly arrived at the task point. At the same time, the usually bustling task point was also deserted at this moment. There were only a few people there. It seemed that the attraction of someone from the inner court was extremely great to the outer court students. There was not a single person at the second level of the task point. At the counter, Bei Xian was leaning against the armchair with his eyes slightly squinted. He seemed to be enjoying himself. "Senior Bei Xian," Zhuowen called out softly. Bei Xian, who was lying on the armchair, opened his sleepy eyes. When he saw that it was Zhuowen, A warm smile immediately appeared on his face. Don't you know what day it is today? Why did you come to the task point to look for me instead of going out? Beixian stood up and walked to the counter. He looked at Zhuowen in surprise. Senior Beixian, are you talking about someone from the inner court? Zhuowen asked. So you know, aren't you curious about the people from the inner court? Beixian joked. Zhuowen shook his head and said, aren't the people from the inner court also cultivators? They are just cultivators who are stronger than us. What's so interesting about them? However, I'm curious about why someone from the inner court suddenly came. I don't know what his motive is. It shouldn't be just for a stroll in the outer court, right? Beixian shook his head and said, of course not. At this point, Beixian's voice suddenly became low. He stretched his head out and whispered to Zhuowen. It is said that the strongest branch in the inner court, Sky Capital Peak, wants to recruit a registered disciple. To an outer court disciple, this is a matter of reaching the heavens in a single bound. Sky Capital Peak? Registered disciple? Zhuowen was stunned. His eyes were filled with doubt. It seems like you don't know anything? Beixian was a little depressed when he saw Zhuowen's reaction. To tell you the truth, there are a total of 9 peaks in the inner court. The owner of each peak is a sage to be. The strongest peak among the 9 peaks is Sky Capital Peak. No matter if it's the power or the strength of the peak owner, they are superior to the other 8 peak owners. It has the most influence in the inner court. At this point, Beixian stopped talking and stared at Zhuowen. It was as if he wanted to see a different expression on Zhuowen's face. Zhuowen was stunned. His eyes revealed a trace of surprise. He didn't expect the inner court to have 9 peaks. Moreover, the owner of each peak was a sage to be. A sage to be was a powerful existence who was half a step into the saint realm. Their strength was far more terrifying than a 9th heaven emperor. A sage to be was enough to crush the combined attack of dozens of 9th heaven emperor. This showed how terrifying a sage to be was. Is there a saint in the inner court? Zhuowen suddenly asked. Beixian nodded and said, the real owner of the inner court is the dean of the inner court. He is a sage to be. However, that old man is very elusive. In the inner court, other than the peak owners of the 9 peaks, no one else has seen the dean of the inner court. There really is a saint. Zhuowen muttered softly. His eyes were filled with boundless radiance. Are you interested in the person who came from the inner court now? Beixian suddenly laughed. Zhuowen spread his hands and said casually, I am indeed interested. This time, Sky Capital Peak is recruiting registered disciples. Will they bring the registered disciples back to the inner court? Since he has become a registered disciple of Sky Capital Peak, he is naturally qualified to enter the inner court with the people from Sky Capital Peak. However, a registered disciple is the lowest existence. If he wants to become an official disciple of the inner court, his cultivation must at least reach the 1st heaven emperor realm. Beixian laughed. He can enter the inner court? Zhuowen's eyes lit up, and he was slightly excited. This was a rare opportunity to enter the inner court. Zhuowen did not want to let it go. However, it is not so easy to be selected as a registered disciple. If you are not strong enough, you will not be selected. Beixian laughed again. I know. In this world, every opportunity requires sufficient strength to fight for it. Zhuowen clenched his fists and said seriously, it is good that you have such awareness. With your talent, it is inevitable that you will enter the inner court. However, you can also try to become a registered disciple. Even if you do not pass, it is fine. After all, you are still young. You will have another chance in the future. Beixian laughed. Soon after, he shook his sleeve, and a jade slip flew into Zhuowen's palm. Zhuowen revealed a trace of doubt as he looked at the jade strip in his palm. However, Beixian's subsequent message made him feel relieved. Chapter 1067. 7 kills blade. Looking at the jade strip in his hand, Zhuowen clenched his right fist. His eyes were filled with gratitude as he cupped his hands at Beixian and said, Thank you, Senior Beixian. You're welcome. You've been helping me with my business every time, and the price is getting higher each time. Speaking of which, I've received quite a lot of benefits from you. This information is just a small matter to me. Beixian waved his hand and continued, You must be here to exchange for something, right? Tell me about it, and I'll help you choose. After keeping the jade strip, Zhuowen nodded and said, Senior Beixian, I need a blade-type spiritual treasure. It's best if it's one with a strong evil aura. Zhuowen's massacre oath-breaking blade technique and massacre momentum both contained evil aura. Hence, if he wanted to unleash its power, he naturally had to choose a blade-type spiritual treasure with a strong evil aura. A blade-type spiritual treasure with a strong evil aura? Let me take a look. Beixian nodded and tapped on the counter with his right hand. Instantly a light screen popped up. His right hand tapped on the light screen repeatedly as he searched for a spiritual treasure that matched Zhuowen's requirements. I've got it. Beixian's eyes lit up. With a pull of his right hand, a square light screen appeared in front of Zhuowen. On the light screen was a pitch-black long blade. The surface of the long blade was engraved with profound and complicated runes, and a mysterious aura was emitted from the blade. This blade is called 7 Kills. It's a superior emperor spiritual treasure. It has a terrifying killing power, and has killed many people in the past. It's a weapon with a strong evil aura. However, the 7 Kills has a strong evil aura. If you're not careful, you'll be devoured by it. Do you really want to exchange for the 7 Kills? Beixian asked with a frown. Zhuowen nodded and said, I'll take it. If that's the case, then take it. However, this 7 Kills is a relatively powerful emperor spiritual treasure. Hence, the price will be a lot more expensive. Around 200,000 contribution points. Beixian waved his sleeve, and a long black blade appeared in his hand. He then tossed it to Zhuowen. After receiving 7 Kills, Zhuowen immediately felt a terrifying evil aura surge out from the hilt of 7 Kills and enter Zhuowen's body. You dare to be arrogant with just this little bit of hostility? Zhuowen shouted coldly. Suddenly, a terrifying slaughter chi gushed out from his body. It was as if countless mountains of corpses and seas of blood appeared behind Zhuowen's back. It was as if the Azura hell had appeared. That terrifying slaughter chi immediately forced the 7 Kill blade out of Zhuowen's body. Wang! The 7 Kills blade wailed as its body trembled. It no longer dared to release the slightest bit of hostility. It was as if it was afraid of the slaughter chi that was gushing out from Zhuowen's body. Beixian looked at Zhuowen in astonishment. When Zhuowen released the slaughter chi, a trace of bloodlust rose in his heart. Furthermore, it was out of his expectations that Zhuowen could subdue the 7 Kills blade so easily. Zhuo Xiaoyu is indeed not simple. The slaughter chi on your body is faintly contained within the heavens and earth. I'm afraid it's a powerful slaughter chi. No wonder you need a spiritual treasure that is filled with hostility. Beixian nodded and thought to himself. There was no need to talk about Zhuowen's talent. Beixian had always seen it. In his heart, he was certain that Zhuowen would be extraordinary in the future. The only thing he lacked now was time. Senior Beixian, I'll take my leave first. Zhuowen chatted with Beixian for a while. After gaining a deeper understanding of the people from the inner academy, he bid farewell to Beixian and left the mission location. After walking out of the mission location, Zhuowen began to ponder about the people from the inner academy as he walked along the quiet and winding path. The inner academy's sky capital peak would definitely not recruit many registered disciples. On the other hand, there were many geniuses in the outer academy. Furthermore, Zhuowen had only joined the outer academy for a short period of time. He would definitely be at a disadvantage in this competition. After pondering for a moment, Zhuowen took out the jade strip that Beixian had given him. The jade strip recorded all the information about the 32 people on the outer academy's Heavenly Sovereign leaderboard. Zhuowen planned to study it carefully. After all, he was currently at a disadvantage. Only by knowing yourself and your enemy would you be able to win 100 battles. Zhuowen's mind was like a needle as it entered the jade scroll. Zhuowen quietly looked at the contents within. After around 10 breaths of time, Zhuowen's mind separated from the jade scroll. He had roughly browsed through the contents of the jade scroll, but his eyes revealed a trace of seriousness. That was because the geniuses on the Heavenly Sovereign leaderboard were not simple. Even the weakest of them was at the intermediate Heavenly Sovereign leaderboard. Furthermore, those geniuses who were able to enter the Heavenly Sovereign leaderboard were all geniuses whose strength far exceeded their cultivation realm. Even if they were at the intermediate Heavenly Sovereign leaderboard, their battle strength was comparable to a late Heavenly Sovereign, or even a peak Heavenly Sovereign. On the Heavenly Sovereign leaderboard, Zhuowen also saw the third Pavilion Master of the Emperor Pavilion, Lu Qing. Lu Qing was ranked 30th, and his strength was also at the intermediate Heavenly Sovereign leaderboard. He was very strong. Moreover, Zhuowen also saw many familiar faces on the leaderboard. Among them there was Cheng Dong, who was ranked 27th, Hu Jia, who was ranked 28th, and Qi Ji, who was ranked 25th. These three people were in charge of the Outer Academy's new disciple recruitment. Zhuowen remembered them very clearly. Zhuowen's focus was on the top 5 Heavenly Sovereign leaderboard. The top 5 geniuses were basically at the peak Heavenly Sovereign leaderboard, and they all had their own powerful trump cards. The person ranked 5th was the second Pavilion Master of the Emperor Pavilion, Di Shi. He was the younger brother of the great Pavilion Master of the Emperor Pavilion, Di Ba. These two brothers single-handedly supported the Emperor Pavilion, which had a great reputation. Their reputations in the Outer Academy were also not weak. Ranked 4th was one of the 4 great powers of the Outer Academy, the Pavilion Master of the Clear Sound Pavilion, Qing Yin. Ranked 3rd was the Pavilion Master of the Fragrant Ink Pavilion, Moyan Wuxiang. Moyan Wuxiang? So she's the great Pavilion Master of the Fragrant Ink Pavilion. Looking at the records of Moyan Wuxiang in the Jade Slip, Zhuowen's eyes revealed a trace of understanding. When he was facing Lu Xiang, Cheng Dong had appeared many times. Among them, the great Pavilion Master behind the Fragrant Ink Pavilion had added fuel to the fire. At that time, Zhuowen was already puzzled. He was not related to the Pavilion Master of the Fragrant Ink Pavilion, so why would he help him so much? It turned out that the Pavilion Master of the Fragrant Ink Pavilion was an old acquaintance of Zhuowen, Moyan Wuxiang. However, Zhuowen had been in the Outer Academy for so long, but Moyan Wuxiang had not come to see him even once. Zhuowen guessed that Moyan Wuxiang might not be able to face him. After all, during the battle with Emperor Qing, she was taken away by Mangshi midway, leaving only Zhuowen, Lu Hantian, and Elder Shiwan to fend for themselves. Perhaps she was also afraid that Zhuowen would hold a grudge against her, which would make things awkward when they met. Of course, Zhuowen did not think that he was such a narrow-minded person. Moreover, Moyan Wuxiang did not leave voluntarily. He was forcefully taken away by Mangshi. This matter could not be blamed on Moyan Wuxiang. Thinking of Moyan Wuxiang, Zhuowen shook his head and did not insist. He knew that when the time came, he would definitely meet Moyan Wuxiang again. He was not in a hurry. As for the second place on the Heavenly Sovereign list, it was the great Pavilion Master of the Emperor Pavilion, Di Ba. His cultivation was also at the peak of the Heavenly Sovereign realm. It was said that Di Ba had great means. He had once escaped from the pursuit of a first-level Emperor realm warrior. He was a very terrifying genius. As for the first place on the Heavenly Sovereign list, it was the Pavilion Master of the Haoyu Pavilion, Xiaoyu. He was in existence with half a foot in the Emperor realm. His combat strength already possessed the power of the Emperor realm. He had once killed a first-level Emperor realm warrior, and fought a second-level Emperor realm warrior. This Xiaoyu is so terrifying. He actually killed a first-level Emperor realm warrior? When Zhuowen looked at the information of Xiaoyu, Zhuowen was really shocked. Although he had killed great emperors before, including Supreme Jin, who was a third-level great emperor, he had not done it with his own strength. He had relied on the exterminating oath-breaking blade, and the blood-robed monk's divine, thought to achieve that level. Moreover, he could only use it once. With Zhuowen's current combat strength, at most, he could kill a peak Heavenly Sovereign expert. If he were to fight a first-level Emperor Realm expert, he was afraid that he would not be able to withstand it. The gap between him and Xiaoyu was not small. The outer court is indeed full of hidden talents. There are so many monstrous geniuses. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with a grave expression as he kept the jade strip. The top 5 geniuses on the Heavenly Sovereign ranking all possess fighting strength that could threaten him. Moreover, the top 10 geniuses on the Heavenly Sovereign ranking were difficult to deal with. Hence, the pride in Zhuowen's heart gradually dissipated. As he passed by a square, Zhuowen's attention was suddenly attracted by a clamor. He turned his head and saw that the center of the square was already filled with people. It was a sea of people, and it looked extremely terrifying. Although the crowd was terrifying, these people consciously made a path in the middle, as if they were making way for others. The senior brothers and senior sisters of the inner court sky capital peak are so strong. All of them are Emperor Realm cultivators. Some of them are not more than 30 years old. They are so young to reach the Emperor Realm. Their talents are terrifying. What kind of existence is the inner court? To become a disciple of the inner court, one must at least reach the first-level Emperor Realm. The disciples who come from the inner court are naturally powerful and talented. Zhuowen's ears twitched, and he heard the discussion of some students not far away. He knew that the reason for the commotion in the square was because of the so-called inner court disciples. Let's take a look. With a thought, Zhuowen lifted his feet and walked towards the center of the square. Soon, he came to an inconspicuous corner of the crowd, and his gaze gathered on the path in the middle of the crowd. There were 7 figures walking slowly in the path. The one in front was a gray-robed elder with a strong aura. His aura was vast, and it was not inferior to that of the outer court dean. Obviously, the gray-robed elder was also a middle-level Emperor Realm expert. The 6 people following behind the gray-robed elder were 4 men and 2 women. All 6 of them had their chins slightly raised, and their eyes were filled with pride. The 6 of them enjoyed the respectful and envious gazes that were directed at them from the surroundings. Compared to the inner court, the so-called geniuses of the outer court were not even worth mentioning in their eyes. The weakest among the 6 of them was a first-level Emperor Realm expert. This kind of cultivation was enough to crush all the geniuses of the outer court. Looks like the inner court is really amazing. It can cultivate such young Emperor Realm experts. No wonder so many outer court disciples want to enter the inner court. Chapter 1068. Arcane Tower. A group of 7 people slowly walked through the path that was separated by the crowd. At the end of the square, the upper echelons of the Outer Academy, led by the Outer Academy headmaster, were already standing there, preparing to welcome these 7 people. After the 7 people arrived in front of the Outer Academy headmaster, they exchanged some greetings. Then, they gradually disappeared at the end of the square under the envious gazes of many people. Clearly, the Outer Academy headmaster and these people from the Inner Academy intended to discuss some important matters. I have long heard that the Inner Academy would come to the Outer Academy to select some geniuses to join the Inner Academy as in-name disciples. Originally, I thought that this was just a rumor. It is unexpected that it is actually true. Since there is such a rumor, it is definitely not baseless. Although the Inner Academy only recruits in-name disciples with the lowest status in the Inner Academy, being able to enter the Inner Academy to train is something that many Outer Academy disciples yearn for. That's right. It is said that the Inner Academy has specialized high-ranked D experts as lecturers. He can help you solve your cultivation problems and save us a lot of trouble. Therefore, almost 70% of the in-name disciples who enter the Inner Academy will successfully advance to D power and become official disciples of the Inner Academy. Discussions continuously sounded from the surroundings. Their voices were filled with envy and yearning. The disciples who joined the Outer Academy had heard of the famous Inner Academy and had yearned for it for a long time. Zhuowen, who was standing in the crowd, narrowed his eyes slightly. It seemed that Bei Xian was right. These 7 people from the Inner Academy might really be here to recruit in-name disciples. However, he did not know when these people from the Inner Academy would announce the recruitment of in-name disciples. After all, from the discussions of the surrounding people, he could tell that the recruitment of in-name disciples was not so simple. Enter the Inner Academy in advance? Zhuowen's eyes revealed a trace of hope as he clenched his hands together. This was because there was another person waiting for him there. That beautiful figure, which he could not let go of for a long time, constantly lingered in his mind. Therefore, Zhuowen must obtain this opportunity. However, he also knew that he must obtain the 1,000-layered stone before entering the Inner Academy. After which, He must use the 1,000-layered stone to merge the 9 types of earth flames into a heavenly flame. Only then would he be able to expel the cold qi in Mu Qinshua's body after meeting her. Next, I need to find an opportunity to enter the Arcana Tower. Once I'm able to meet Mu Feng, things will be much easier. Zhuowen raised his head slightly as he spoke. His deep eyes landed on the arcane tower nearby, which was covered in countless runes, as a trace of determination flowed out of his eyes. Let's go to the Arcana Tower and ask about how to join the Arcana Tower. Zhuowen muttered to himself as he walked towards the Arcana Tower. He had been in the outer courtyard for 2 months, but he still hadn't entered the Arcana Tower. The structure of the Arcane Tower was similar to that of the Cultivation Tower. There was also a rather large plaza in front of the tower, but this plaza was much quieter than the one in front of the Cultivation Tower. Moreover, most of the people walking around the plaza were arcanists wearing long robes. Zhuowen's arrival caused quite a few arcanists to be surprised, but they didn't say anything. Even though this place was within the boundaries of the Arcana Tower, the Arcana Tower was a part of the outer courtyard in the first place. On the surface, they didn't prohibit other students from entering. Zhuowen saw quite a few arcanists setting up stalls in the large plaza. The stalls were selling yuan crystals, low-level yuan arrays, as well as some materials needed to refine yuan arrays. There were even some secret spirit techniques. There was a dazzling array of items, and there was a great variety of them. Zhuowen casually swept his gaze over these stalls, clearly lacking in interest. This was because the yuan arrays on the stalls weren't very high level. Most of them were grade 3 yuan arrays, with the occasional grade 4 yuan array. As for grade 5 yuan arrays, there wasn't a single one. The Greater Infinity Sword array in Zhuowen's possession was a grade 5 yuan array, so he was naturally not interested in any yuan arrays below grade 5. However, he also knew that grade 5 yuan arrays were usually life-saving treasures for arcanists. Even if they had one on them, they wouldn't put it on display for sale. However, Zhuowen did see quite a few decent yuan array materials at some of the stalls. Ice silver flower? Zhuowen let out a soft cry of surprise, and immediately stopped in front of a stall. The owner of this stall was a young man around 23 years old. He wore a long yellow robe, and there were 3 vertical lines on the chest of his robe, indicating that he was a grade 3 arcanist. Brother, are you interested in buying this ice silver flower? The yellow-robed young man's eyes lit up when he saw Zhuowen stop in front of his stall, and he immediately smiled with some joy. However, what puzzled him was that Zhuowen was wearing the outer courtyard uniform, and not in the attire of an arcanist. So why had this person come to the plaza of the Arcana Tower? How much is this ice silver flower? Zhuowen nodded. In the past half a year, he had been studying yuan arrays. From his initial superficial understanding to now, he had become somewhat proficient. Originally, he could only refine grade 3 yuan arrays, but now he was completely familiar with grade 4 yuan arrays. He could even barely refine grade 5 yuan arrays. Last time, Zhuowen had tried to refine a grade 5 yuan array, the Ice Profound array, and had failed many times. However, he had also learned a lot from his experience. Later on, he discovered that the yuan array lacked a plant like the ice silver flower, which was extremely cold and yin. However, he was still in the cultivation room at that time, so he didn't exchange for it with task points. When he came out, he had basically forgotten about this matter. Now that he had come to the plaza of the Arcana Tower, and suddenly saw the ice silver flower, he remembered that he had failed to refine the Ice Profound array, which was why he had such an intense reaction and stopped. Seeing that Zhuowen had the intention to buy it, the yellow-robed young man's eyes flashed, and he said quite enthusiastically, "This ice silver flower grows on the peak of the Longhan Mountain in the extreme north of Excellent Spirit Island. It is a very rare medicinal herb." The yellow-robed youth was very enthusiastic in his speech. He was full of praises for the silver ice flower. It was as if this flower was something that only existed in the heavens and could only be found in the mortal world. However, Zhuowen silently watched the yellow-robed youth's boastful speech. Eventually, the yellow-robed youth couldn't continue his speech. "How about this? I won't give a random price. 1,000 contribution points, This price isn't considered expensive, right? Finally, the yellow-robed young man asked tentatively. It's indeed not expensive. I want all 10 ice silver flowers in your stall. Zhuowen nodded. With a stroke of his right hand, he put the 10 ice silver flowers in the yellow-robed young man's stall into his spirit ring. Then, he put 10,000 contribution points into the yellow-robed young man's contribution counter. You actually want all of them? The yellow-robed young man was stunned at first. Then, he saw the 10,000 contribution points that had suddenly appeared on the counter on his wrist. A look of excitement immediately appeared on his face. His stall's business wasn't very good. He would be very satisfied if he could earn 500 or 600 contribution points a day. But now, because of Zhuowen, he had earned 10,000 contribution points all of a sudden. Even after deducting the cost, he still made about half of the profit. The yellow-robed young man was naturally overjoyed. No matter how he looked at Zhuowen, he had a good impression of him. After buying the ice silver flowers, Zhuowen didn't leave. Instead, he said to the yellow-robed young man in a low voice, Brother, my name is Zhuowen. I would like to ask, how can I successfully join the Arcana Tower? Because of Zhuowen, his income had increased explosively today. The yellow-robed young man naturally didn't hide anything from Zhuowen. So it's little brother Zhua. You can call me Huangcan. From the looks of it, little brother Zhua shouldn't be an arcanist of our Arcana Tower yet. Since you plan on joining our Arcana Tower, then you should also have a talent for spiritual energy, right? Huangcan smiled rather warmly. Zhuowen nodded and smiled. I do have some talent for spiritual energy. That's why I've come to the Arcana Tower to ask about it. I hope you can enlighten me. Huangcan chuckled and then said in a low voice, The Arcana Tower has 7 floors. Each floor represents a Grade 1 Arcanist. The first floor is where Grade 1 Arcanists are active. The second floor is for Grade 2 Arcanists. And the 7th floor is where the Master of the Arcana Tower, Master Mu Feng, lives. It's said that many of Master Mu Feng's creations are displayed there, and there are even Grade 7 origin arrays among them. As for if you want to join the Arcana Tower, it's actually quite simple. You just have to enter the first floor and undergo the corresponding spiritual energy test and the creation of the origin arrays. As long as the examiner thinks you pass, then you can successfully become a member of the Arcana Tower. Hearing this, Zhuowen understood what Huangcan meant. It seemed that joining the Arcana Tower wasn't as difficult as he had thought. As long as he passed the test, he could become a member of the Arcana Tower. Also, the robes of the Arcanists in the Arcana Tower are divided into different grades. From low to high they are red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and purple. Because I'm a Grade 3 Arcanist, I'm wearing a yellow robe. In the entire Arcana Tower, the only person who can wear a purple robe is Master Mu Feng. Huangcan's eyes were filled with admiration when he spoke of Mu Feng. After all, Mu Feng was the great person who had founded the Arcana Tower. Moreover, he was an important figure in the entire outer courtyard. Even the headmaster of the outer courtyard treated Mu Feng with respect. It was clear just how high Mu Feng's status in the outer courtyard was. Brother Zhua, I see that this is your first time in the Arcana Tower. Let me show you around the Arcana Tower and take you to the test. If you pass, then you can successfully join the Arcana Tower. At that time, we'll be fellow disciples of the same sect. Huangcan acted as if he was very familiar with the place. With a wave of his sleeve, he stored all the items on the stall into his spirit ring. Then, he led Zhuowen towards the Arcana Tower. Zhuowen was startled, but he didn't say anything. He only silently followed behind Huangcan. After all, this was his first time in the Arcana Tower. He really did need someone to show him around the Arcana Tower. After entering the Arcana Tower, Zhuowen discovered that the space inside the Arcana Tower was actually much larger than the Cultivation Tower. However, from the outside, the Arcana Tower and the Cultivation Tower were actually the same size. Why was the space inside so large? Chapter 1069. Arcana Tower Test. So that's how it is. Zhuowen's eyes flashed slightly, but his heart was somewhat moved. This Mu Feng was indeed a heavenly Arcana master. The number of yuan formations he could set up was truly numerous. Not only was the Yuan Qi gathering Yuan formation in the main city set up by him, he even knew the space expansion Yuan formation of the Arcana Tower. He was truly knowledgeable. There was a ring-shaped counter at the center of the first level of the Arcana Tower. A red-robed youth was lazily sprawled on the counter. His eyes were drooping, as if he would fall asleep at any moment. Huang Qin led Zhuowen to the front of this red-robed youth and gently knocked on the glass counter below. The originally drowsy red-robed young man was immediately woken up by this knock. His eyes revealed a furious expression. Just as he was about to curse out loud, he saw the yellow robe on Huang Qin's body. The vulgarities that he originally wanted to spit out were forcefully swallowed back down his throat. The red robe meant that this youth was a grade 1 Arcana Master, while Huang Qin was a grade 3 Arcana Master. He did not dare to yell at such an existence. So it's Senior Brother Huang Qin. May I know why Senior Brother Huang Qin has come this time? The red-robed youth had a fawning smile on his face as he spoke. The warm smile on Huang Qin's face had already disappeared and was replaced by a dignified expression. He was a grade 3 Arcana Master, so he naturally had to display the appropriate demeanor in front of this red-robed youth. Zhuowen looked at Huang Qin's change somewhat strangely. However, he did not say anything and only quietly observed. Huang Qin would probably tell him about the test. This is my friend. He wants to join our Arcana Tower, so I brought him here to test him. Huang Qin cleared his throat and said, so it's Senior Brother Huang Qin's friend. That's easy. I also have a red robe here. This friend can directly wear it and become a member of our Arcana Tower. The red-robed youth's face became even more flattering as he actually took out another red robe from his spirit ring. There's no need to test him? Zhuowen was startled, unable to react in time. There's no need. Since he's Senior Brother Huang Qin's friend, I have to take care of him, the red-robed youth hurriedly said with a smile. Huang Qin coughed dryly and said softly to Zhuowen, Brother Zhua, since this is Junior Brother's kindness, then accept it. After all, the test has a certain failure rate. Hearing this, Zhuowen finally understood the intentions of Huang Qin and the red-robed youth. It turned out that the two of them felt that Zhuowen's spiritual talent wasn't very high and thought that he would fail the foundation test, so they planned to let him in through the back door. With regards to the actions of Huang Qin and the red-robed young man, Zhuowen did not know whether to laugh or cry in his heart. However, since there was no need for a test, Zhuowen had saved himself some trouble. He nodded his head and received the red robe. Seeing Zhuowen take off the red robe, Huang Qin revealed a brilliant smile on his face. He smiled at Zhuowen and said, Brother Zhua, train well on the first level in the future. Once your spiritual energy has increased, you can try to enter the second level. Zhuowen nodded his head and said seriously, Brother Huang, you mean to say that if I want to enter the higher levels of the Arcana Tower, I can only take the test one level after another? Huang Qin said without hesitation. Of course. This is a rule set by Master Mu Feng. He hopes that the Arcana Masters of our Arcana Tower can be down to earth and trained step by step. We must not be greedy. So that's how it is. Zhuowen softly muttered. Soon after, he continued. Then let's continue towards the second level. After explaining, Huang Qin originally planned to bring Zhuowen out of the first level. However, Zhuowen's sudden words caused his footsteps to stagger, and he nearly fell to the ground in a somewhat unstable manner. Soon after, Huang Qin turned his head and said somewhat awkwardly, Brother Zhua, you want to obtain the qualifications to become a grade 2 Arcana Master? There's really nothing I can do about it. Zhuowen, however, smiled and said, Don't worry. I'm only going up to take the test this time. I won't make things difficult for you. If I fail, I naturally won't pester you endlessly. Huang Qin sighed softly when he heard this. What he was most afraid of was that Zhuowen would ask him to open a back door for the second level. The first level was one thing. A grade 1 Arcana Master was the lowest level of existence in the first place. Having one more Arcana Master wouldn't make any difference, and opening a back door would be quite easy. However, the test for a grade 2 Arcana Master was not so lax. There would be several people supervising the test, so there was no chance of cheating. Alright then, I'll take you to the second level. As he spoke, Huang Qin led Zhuowen up the stairs to the second level. The second level was similar to the first level. There was also a ring-shaped counter in the center, but there were 3 people at the counter, all of them grade 2 Arcana Masters. The 3 of you. This friend of mine is here to take the test for a grade 2 Arcana Master. I hope that the 3 of you can make an exception for him. Huang Qin clasped his hands towards the 3 Arcana Masters at the counter. Huang Qin's status as a grade 3 Arcana Master was still somewhat useful, and the 3 people at the counter treated him rather courteously. However, what needed to be tested still needed to be tested. They couldn't just throw the orange robe at Zhuowen like they had on the first level. Brother Zhua, this test, Huang Qin said somewhat helplessly. Don't worry, I'm naturally able to handle this test. Zhuowen softly chuckled as he walked to the front of the counter. A lady from the trio took out a round transparent ball and placed it in front of Zhuowen as she said, "This is used to test your mental energy. If your mental energy has reached grade 2, it will light up." Huang Qin frowned a little. This Zhuowen originally didn't belong to the Arcana Tower's sphere of influence. He should be one of the outer courtyard's martial arts students. So he didn't think that Zhuowen's spiritual power could reach the second level. After all, most of a cultivator's time was spent raising their cultivation. How could they spend so much time and energy raising their spiritual power? Even if their spiritual power talent was good, they would still favor one over another. Zhuowen calmly placed his right hand on the round ball. Then, an extremely dazzling light suddenly surged out from the transparent ball. The moment the light swept out, Zhuowen quickly withdrew his right hand and said to the 3 people at the counter, "This should be enough, right?" "It's enough. Congratulations on obtaining the orange robe." The 3 people looked at each other and withdrew the round transparent ball. The woman took out the orange robe and handed it to Zhuowen. His spiritual power really reached the second level? Huang Qin was a little stunned, a trace of astonishment in his eyes. "Brother Zhua, I really didn't expect your spiritual power to reach the second level. Looks like you've also studied your spiritual power while cultivating." Huang Qin came to Zhuowen's side and laughed. Zhuowen nodded. After changing into the orange robe, he walked towards the third level. When he saw Zhuowen's actions, the smile on Huang Qin's face froze. Why was this Zhuowen heading towards the third level? Could it be that he wanted to take the test to become a third-level Arcana Master? It can't be. Brother Zhua's spiritual power is on par with mine? Huang Qin came back to his senses and muttered in a low voice as he followed behind Zhuowen. The test on the third level was a little complicated. Other than checking whether one's spiritual power had reached the third level, the person in charge of the test actually took out a broken third-level yuan array and asked Zhuowen to repair it. His spiritual power has actually reached the third level. This brother Zhua. When Huang Qin saw the transparent ball in Zhuowen's hand, which was used to test rank 3 mental energy, shining brightly, he did not know how to describe his current feelings. This is the third-level yuan array, the 8 extreme array. However, it is a damaged product. The materials to repair this array are all here. If you can repair it within 2 hours, you will receive the yellow robe. The third-level tester said to Zhuowen, as he threw out a yuan array and a pile of materials. It's actually the 8 extreme array. This yuan array is quite difficult to repair among the third-level yuan arrays. If I were to repair it, I would need around an hour. I wonder how long Brother Zhuo will take. Huang Qin softly muttered as he watched from the side. His gaze was fixed on Zhuowen. Although he was a little surprised that Zhuowen's spiritual power had reached the third level, he knew that refining a yuan array required a certain amount of time and practice. After all, Zhuowen was a martial cultivator. It was unlikely that he had a lot of time to practice refining yuan arrays. Therefore, Huang Qin felt that it was unlikely that Zhuowen could completely repair the 8 extreme array in 2 hours. Zhuowen, who was standing in front of the counter, nodded slightly. Soon after, he stomped his foot and summoned a green flame. This was one of the earth fires in Zhuowen's body. It was called the 3,000 green lotus flames. Earth fire? Huang Qin's pupil shrank as he exclaimed in surprise. Earth fire was a rare existence for most Arcana Masters. At the very least, among all the Arcana Masters in the Arcana Tower, Those who possessed earth fire were definitely in the minority. Even Huang Qian's body did not possess such a powerful flame. The Arcana Master in charge of the test was also shocked. Clearly, his thoughts about Zhuowen possessing a flame like the earth fire were similar to Huang Qian's. Zhuowen's right hand controlled the 3,000 green lotus flames, while his left hand controlled the flow of materials in and out. Everything seemed very natural and smooth. After about 5 minutes, Zhuowen slowly withdrew the 3,000 green lotus flames into his body. Soon after, he handed the 8 extreme array to the tester and said, "It's done. You can take a look to see if there are any mistakes." So fast. The tester looked at Zhuowen suspiciously. Soon after, his gaze landed on the 8 extreme array. At this moment, Huang Qian also came over and asked Zhuowen in confusion, "Brother Zhua, it's only been 5 minutes, and you've already finished repairing it? Don't you think you're cutting corners? You'll know once you see the results." Zhuowen said indifferently, "Perfect. You actually managed to repair the 8 extreme array to such a perfect state. This is your yellow robe. Take it." The tester's excited voice rang out. Huang Qian's suspicious expression immediately froze. His gaze was numb as he looked at the 8 extreme array in the tester's hands and Zhuowen, who was leisurely taking the yellow robe. He felt as if his worldview had been turned upside down. He could accept that Zhuowen's mental strength had reached the 3rd grade, and that he possessed earth fire. However, it only took him 5 minutes to repair the 8 extreme array. Was this still a feat that a 3rd grade Arcana Master could achieve? Chapter 1070. Luo Xiang. After putting on the yellow robes, Zhuowen smiled at Huang Qian and said, "Brother Huang, can you accompany me to the 4th level?" Huang Qian, who was still suffering from a severe blow, immediately felt as if his heart had been ruthlessly stabbed by a knife when he heard these words. Soon after, he stared at Zhuowen with dead fish eyes and said, "Brother Zhuowen, do you mean that your mental energy has already reached grade 4? Won't you find out after the test?" Zhuowen chuckled as he replied. On the other hand, Huang Qian's face twitched. He had really misjudged Zhuowen. He didn't expect that a random customer would be such a powerful existence. Zhuowen's mental strength could actually reach level 4. Moreover, Zhuowen seemed to be a few years younger than him. Huang Qian was just about to reply when an ambiguous voice suddenly sounded, causing Huang Qian's eyes to darken as he fell silent. "Oh, isn't this Huang Qian? Why did you enter the Arcana Tower instead of obediently setting up your stall outside? How long can you train in the Arcana Tower with that poor appearance of yours?" Zhuowen frowned slightly. His footsteps, which had originally been heading towards the 4th level, paused slightly. He turned his head and saw 2 figures walking over from the entrance of the 3rd level. The 2 figures were a man and a woman. The man was slightly older than Huang Qian and had an ordinary appearance. However, he was wearing a long green robe and was actually a grade 4 Arcana Master. Beside the man was a pretty girl in a long yellow robe. This girl was around the same age as Huang Qian, around 23 years old. She was above average in terms of looks and had a curvaceous figure. Her figure was extremely hot and eye-catching. Huang Qian's gaze shifted slightly. It first landed on the girl as a trace of sorrow appeared in his eyes. Soon after, he stared intently at the man and said, "Chen Gang, my matters have nothing to do with you, right?" The green-robed man named Chen Gang laughed mischievously. His right hand that was wrapped around the woman beside him was extremely mischievous. He pinched the woman's ample bosom, causing the woman to let out a delicate moan. However, she didn't struggle free. Instead, she continued to snuggle up to Chen Gang. Her gaze didn't even look in Huang Qian's direction. Seeing this scene, Huang Qian's expression became extremely gloomy. The sorrow in his eyes became even more intense. His hands were tightly clenched. Zhuowen even noticed that Huang Qian's palms were covered in sweat that was shining with white light. From the expression on Huang Qian's face, as well as the actions of Chen Gang and the yellow-robed lady, Zhuowen could roughly guess what was going on. However, he did not open his mouth. Instead, he quietly observed everything. Hee. Indeed, it's unrelated, but I just don't like you, that's all. By the way, are you still not allowed to do that? Right, Xixiang? Chen Gang said in a sarcastic tone. He shifted his gaze to the woman in his arms and asked in a deliberately loud voice. The yellow-robed lady named Luo Xiang glanced indifferently at Huang Can. Soon after, she smiled at Chen Gang and said, "He's just a piece of trash. Why bother? Let's go to the 4th floor. This piece of trash is annoying." Huang Can's face was as pale as snow. He took a few steps back and said in a deep voice, "Luo Xiang, why do you have to be so ruthless? Everyone knows how I Huang Can treated you back then. Why do you want to leave me and give yourself to this Chen Gang?" Luo Xiang stared indifferently at Zhuowen and said, "You're still so naive, even stupid. In this martial world, the weak are prey to the strong. Your strength isn't enough to give me what I want. Why should I be with you?" Chen Gang also laughed complacently and said, "Huang Can, you're too weak. What future can a grade 3 Arcana Master have? Can you give Luo Xiang a grade 4 Yuan array? Can you bring her to the 4th floor of the Arcane Tower to cultivate? Since you can't give her anything, why should Luo Xiang stay with a piece of trash like you? Brother Gang, let's go. This person is too annoying. Let's not stay on the 3rd floor." Luo Xiang said to Chen Gang with a charming smile. Chen Gang laughed and said, "You're right. We don't need to pay too much attention to this piece of trash. Let's go." After saying that, Chen Gang and Luo Xiang walked to the 4th floor hand in hand. However, when the two were about to step on the stairs to the 4th floor, Zhuowen suddenly opened his mouth. "Brother Huang isn't the piece of trash you say. You're a few years older than Brother Huang, but you're only at the initial grade 4. Brother Huang is already at the perfect grade 3. It's only a matter of time before he catches up to you. Are you qualified to call Brother Huang a piece of trash?" When these words came out, Chen Gang and Luo Xiang's footsteps suddenly stiffened. Then, their gazes shifted slightly and stared at Zhuowen. Chen Gang said coldly, "Who are you? A mere grade 3 Arcana Master. Are you going to speak for a piece of trash like Chen Gang? Don't you know your place?" "Brother Zhua, let's forget about it. There's no need to get into a conflict with Chen Gang. His background in the Arcana Tower is not low. It's better not to provoke him." Huang Can came to Zhuowen's side and advised in a low voice, "It seems that Huang Can didn't tell you my identity. But it's fine. I won't argue with a piece of trash like you. A mere grade 3 Arcana Master dares to talk back to me. Now kneel down and kowtow to me a few times, and I won't pursue your mistake." Chen Gang turned around and faced Zhuowen indifferently. "Huang Can, just look at yourself. What kind of friends have you made? A mere rank 3 Arcana dares to be so arrogant. It really is a case of people behaving like friends." Luo Xiang, who was standing beside Chen Gang, finally spoke up, her voice sharp and ear-piercing. Huang Can's face was gloomy, but he did not refute. Luo Xiang used to be the woman he loved deeply. Unfortunately, she had now become like this. In order to obtain better resources, she had resolutely abandoned him and thrown herself into Chen Gang's arms. At this moment, his heart was like dead ashes. He was in no mood to refute. Zhuowen also felt Huang Can's sorrowful mood. He said indifferently, "Brother Huang, why are you so depressed? Why do you have to be so depressed? With your talent, it won't be difficult for you to become a rank 4 Arcana Master. Once you're strong enough, no one will be able to bully you. At that time, some people will regret their choices." Huang Can lifted his head when he heard these words. There was a lost expression in his eyes. Soon after, he saw the ridicule in Luo Xiang's and Chen Gang's eyes. Both of his fists were tightly clenched. He was extremely unwilling to accept this. The woman he loved had left him and thrown herself into someone else's arms. Now, he was even being bullied by that person. Huang Can was very unwilling. What you need to do now is not to be depressed and muddle through. What you need to do is to work hard and advance bravely. Only a true powerhouse can obtain what they want. Only then can they teach those who oppress them a lesson. If you continue to be depressed, your life will be over." Zhuowen continued to remind him. As for Chen Gang's words, he did not pay any attention to them. In fact, he directly ignored them. Huang Can's eyes brightened. The bewilderment within them gradually faded and was replaced by a deep glint. Zhuowen was right. If he became depressed because of this matter, he would only be ridiculed even more by Chen Gang. Chen Gang's gaze became increasingly gloomy. He felt humiliated by Zhuowen's disregard. He took a step forward and coldly said to Zhuowen, "What kind of attitude is this? From the looks of it, you don't plan on kowtowing to me at all? Chen Gang, don't tell me you plan on fighting in the Arcana Tower? Master Mufeng has strictly ordered that fighting is not allowed in the Arcana Tower. Are you going to violate that?" Huang Qin hurriedly stepped out from behind Zhuowen when he saw Chen Gang's unfriendly expression. "Humph, you two don't know what's good for you. If you have the guts, stay in the Arcana Tower. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite." Chen Gang seemed to have thought of something. A trace of hesitation appeared on his face. He retracted his foot and brought Luo Xiang up to the 4th floor. "Brother Huang, let's go up as well," Zhuowen said to Huang Qian and directly stepped onto the stairs to the 4th floor. Huang Qian's expression was slightly stunned. He knew that Zhuowen was determined to enter the 4th floor to take the test. He nodded and followed behind him. The 4th floor was much larger than the first 3 floors. There were a few green-robed arcana masters coming and going in the large hall. Zhuowen and Huang Qian, the 2 yellow-robed arcana masters, attracted quite a bit of attention when they entered the 4th floor. "You two are grade 3 arcana masters. Why did you enter the 4th floor for no reason?" A tall green-robed youth slowly walked in front of Zhuowen and Huang Qian and asked indifferently, "Isn't that woman also a grade 3 arcana master? Why didn't you stop her and instead came to stop the 2 of us?" Zhuowen pointed at Luo Xiang, who was nestled in Chen Gang's arms, and said indifferently. The tall youth glanced at Chen Gang and Luo Xiang and said expressionlessly, "A green-robed arcana master is qualified to bring another arcana master to the 4th floor. The 2 of you are yellow-robed arcana masters and have no one to lead you. What qualifications do you have? 2 fellows who are asking to be humiliated. Mere yellow-robed arcana masters dare to enter the 4th floor. Do they really think they are grade 4 arcana masters? What a joke." Chen Gang also noticed Zhuowen and Huang Qian, who had been stopped, and loudly mocked them. Chen Gang's mocking words also attracted the attention of the other arcana masters in the hall. Everyone's eyes gathered on Zhuowen and Huang Qian, their eyes full of ridicule. "The 2 of you, please go back," the tall and sturdy young man said indifferently. "I didn't enter the 4th floor for no reason. I intend to take the grade 4 arcana master test. Are you going to stop me?" Zhuowen suddenly said. Grade 4 arcana master test? If so, go to that counter. If you don't pass the test, leave the 4th floor as soon as possible. We don't welcome yellow-robed arcana masters here." The tall youth nodded and pointed at the ring-shaped counter in the center of the hall. Zhuowen nodded and walked straight to the ring-shaped counter, while Huang Qin silently followed behind. "How laughable. You actually want to take the grade 4 arcana master test. It has been a long time since a yellow-robed arcana master became a green-robed arcana master. You coming in to take the test is just asking to be humiliated." Chen Gang snorted coldly. The surrounding green-robed arcana masters also looked at Zhuowen and Huang Qin with interest. Chen Gang was right. It had been a long time since a new member joined the 4th floor. They wondered if the youth in front of them could successfully obtain a green robe. Chapter 1071. Difficult. Seated at the counter was a green-robed elder. He had also noticed Zhuowen's arrival. His eyes were filled with indifference as he asked, "Are you here to take the grade 4 mental energy test?" Zhuowen nodded. The elder did not say anything else, as he directly took out a black palm-sized cube from his sleeve. "Crush it, and you will have the qualifications to be green-robed." After the green-robed elder finished speaking, he once again bent over the table, as if nothing had happened. He completely ignored Zhuowen. Clearly, he did not believe that Zhuowen could successfully pass the test. 4 yuan crystal block? I did not expect that old man Luli would take out such a thing as a grade 4 mental energy test item. Isn't this a little too harsh? When they saw the black cube that the green-robed elder handed over to Zhuowen, the gazes of many people in the hall hardened as a strange expression appeared on their faces. "It's actually a 4 yuan crystal block? Elder, isn't this test a little too difficult? If you want to crush this 4 yuan crystal block, you will need at least an advanced grade 4 mental energy. Even an initial grade 4 mental energy might not be able to crush it." Huang Can's face was a little pale, as he hurriedly spoke to the green-robed elder in front of the counter. However, he was interrupted by the latter. If you don't want to take the test, you can leave. Since this old man says that this is the test, then it is the test. If you are not satisfied, you can forget about taking the test and scram back to the third floor. The green-robed elder once again lifted his head and spoke in an extremely rude manner. That's right. If you don't have the ability, then don't take the test. Elder Luli is very busy. You are just wasting his time by being so fussy. Chen Gang and Nuo Xiang came to the front of the counter as they looked at Zhuowen and Huang Qin with mocking eyes. Chen Gang, do you need me to open a private room for you? Your brother had already notified me before he entered the 5th floor. Moreover, he had already paid the contribution points. You only need to take a key. The originally cold and indifferent elder, Luli, immediately revealed a smile when he saw Chen Gang. My brother is so considerate. Thank you, Senior Luli. Chen Gang smiled politely as he received the jade key from Luli. However, he did not enter the private room at the depths of the 4th level. Instead, he looked at Zhuowen with a mocking gaze. He wanted to see how this arrogant Zhuowen would embarrass himself. Looking at this scene, Zhuowen's eyes revealed a trace of understanding. It seemed that the green-robed old man's deliberately making things difficult for him was related to Chen Gang. The green-robed elder also understood Chen Gang's meaning. His indifferent gaze once again landed on Zhuowen's body as he said, "Why? Aren't you going to start the test? If you can't break this 4 yuan crystal block, you can immediately roll out of the 4th floor. You two really don't know what you're talking about. You don't have the ability, yet you insist on puffing yourself up at your own cost and coming to the 4th level to take the test. You really are like 2 clowns." The corners of Chen Gang's mouth curled up into a sneer. Nuo Xiang, who was beside Chen Gang, stared coldly at Huang Qin and said, "Huang Can, do you really think that you haven't lost enough face? You actually followed me to the 4th floor. Let me tell you clearly, my man is Chen Gang. Is it fun for you to pester me like this?" Nuo Xiang's words caused Huang Qin's pupils to shrink. There was a trace of anger in his eyes. He did not follow Nuo Xiang here, but purely to accompany Zhuowen to take the test. Now in Nuo Xiang's eyes he was pestering her. Pestering her? Did I say that I came to the 4th floor because of you? Please don't be so self-righteous, okay? Since we are no longer related, what does it have to do with you where I go? Huang Qin replied coldly. Nuo Xiang's pretty face froze. She did not expect that Huang Can, who was originally very good-tempered, would actually dare to speak to her like this. However, she could not refute. She really had no relationship with Huang Qin now. You really don't mean what you say. Anyway, I don't want to see you, but you just have to walk in front of me. Don't you feel annoyed? Nuo Xiang snorted coldly. I just came here to accompany my friend to take the test. It has nothing to do with you. Since you feel annoyed, you don't have to pay attention to me at all. Huang Qin replied coldly. He had thoroughly seen the nature of Nuo Xiang, so his previous good impression of her had already disappeared at this moment. Now there was even a trace of disgust. Looking at Huang Can's indifferent attitude, Nuo Xiang sneered again and again. She was sure that Huang Qin was trying to cover up. Your friend? This trash actually dares to take the test to become a 4th-grade arcanist. He is really asking for humiliation. Nuo Xiang's beautiful eyes fell on Zhuowen, who was not far away. The corner of her mouth had already revealed a very thick sneer. Kacha! Suddenly, a crisp breaking sound resounded in the entire hall of the 4th floor. Immediately, Zhuowen's right hand slowly opened. The crystal block that was originally held in his hand was now broken into black powder. Just now, when Huang Can, Chen Gang and Nuo Xiang were talking, Zhuowen had already silently mobilized the mental strength in his body to destroy the structure of the crystal block. This crystal block was extremely tough on the outside, but the inner part was quite fragile. However, if you want to enter the crystal block, your mental strength must be at least at the advanced level of the 4th grade. So before, there were people in the hall who said that the 4th grade mental strength test was extremely harsh. After all, generally, the mental strength of the arcanists who took the 4th grade arcanist test was basically at the advanced level of the 3rd grade and the initial level of the 4th grade. As for the advanced level of the 4th grade, they had already become a green robe. How could they still be a yellow robe on the 3rd floor? The breaking sound, in the entire hall, was so sweet and crisp. Immediately, the rest of the people in the hall were stunned. Their eyes were all fixed on the black powder in Zhuowen's palm. This kid, unexpectedly, quietly crushed the crystal block, which meant that this kid's mental strength was at least at the advanced level of the 4th grade. Chen Gang and Nuo Xiang's faces stiffened as they stared at the black powder in Zhuowen's palm. Even the green-robed old man's face stiffened as he stared at the black powder. The crystal block has been broken, so I passed the test, right? Zhuowen put the black powder in front of the counter and said calmly. The green-robed old man came back to his senses, and his pale eyebrows slightly wrinkled. He waved his right hand, and the black powder in front of the counter flew into his hand. He looked at it carefully, as if he was judging whether Zhuowen had really crushed the 4-yuan crystal. Senior Luli, I'm afraid this kid must have used some unknown method to cheat, and broke the crystal block. Chen Gang was the first to react, and suddenly said to the green-robed elder. After carefully looking at the black powder in his hand, the green-robed elder nodded and said with a dignified face, Chen Gang is right. There is indeed something wrong with the powder of the crystal block. What method did you use to break it? Senior Luli, is it really okay for you to slander me like this? Brother Zhuo broke the crystal block in front of you. If he really cheated, didn't you discover it before? After he broke it, you said he cheated. Huang Qin said with some indignation. The green-robed elder's face suddenly became cold. His right hand slammed on the surface of the table and said indifferently, How dare you talk to me like this? I'm obviously telling the truth. How dare you say that I'm slandering you? Isn't it? Brother Zhuo passed the test in front of you. If he really cheated, you should have mentioned it before. Now that the 4-yuan crystal block is broken, you say that he cheated. You don't even give a reason. Isn't that just slandering others? Huang Qin said indignantly. I think you're courting death. The green-robed elder was a little angry. He waved his sleeve and suddenly, a terrifying mental strength came crushing down, turning into a huge mental strength palm and grabbed at Huang Qin. Boom. However, just as the psychic energy palm was about to touch Huang Qin, another psychic energy barrier suddenly rose up and blocked the psychic energy palm. You dare to fight in the arcane tower. The green-robed elder's eyes turned and stared at Zhuowen as he said coldly. Zhuowen laughed and said, You were the one who attacked first, weren't you? Now you're accusing me of fighting in the arcane tower. Don't you think it's funny? Who am I? Who are you people? One of you cheated wantonly, and the other offended his superiors. It's natural for me to teach you a lesson. You rashly resisted and violated the rules of the arcane tower, the green-robed elder said coldly. You mean to say that we have to stand here and let you beat us? Zhuowen raised his eyebrows, and his voice gradually turned cold. Of course, the green-robed elder said matter-of-factly. What a laughable statement. Zhuowen smiled coldly. A wave of mental strength gradually spread out from his Naiwen palace and circled around his body, forming a faintly discernible and invisible force. Senior Hedro, not only did this person cheat, but he also tried to resist. This kind of insolent little bastard, who doesn't know the rules, should be taken down immediately. If it's not convenient for Senior to do it, let me do it, Chen Gang, who had been standing to the side, volunteered. You're right. It's time to teach these arrogant fellows a lesson, and teach them a lesson. However, the arcane tower cannot kill, so don't be too harsh. Just cripple these two. The green-robed elder nodded lightly. I know the rules. Senior Hedro, don't worry. Chen Gang cracked a smile and slowly walked towards Zhuowen, his eyes full of mockery. The other arcanists in the hall only stood to the side, not intending to participate in this matter. They could only sigh inwardly at Zhuowen's bad luck. Chen Gang's status in the arcane tower was extraordinary. This was because Chen Gang's elder brother, Chen Xian, was a genius on the 5th floor of the arcane tower. Moreover, he had a good relationship with the 4th floor tester Hedro. Thus, anyone who offended Chen Gang would often find it difficult to move an inch in the arcane tower. If you had kowtowed to me and admitted your mistakes just now, there wouldn't be so much trouble right now. Unfortunately, it was you who didn't know when to back down. Thus, I will teach you a rather memorable lesson, so that you know how to behave in the future. Chapter 1072. Grandmaster Lan Miaozhuowen's face sank when he sensed the extremely terrifying spiritual energy. He gently stretched out his right hand and instantly formed a seemingly material spiritual barrier in front of him. Boom! Chen Gang's mental energy arrived in an instant and slammed heavily on the mental energy barrier. The mental energy barrier trembled violently, but it was only trembling and could not be broken. Is that all you've got? Zhuowen raised his head and smiled mockingly, causing Chen Gang's face to darken. Mysterious fire formation. Chen Gang shook his sleeve and 16 flaming crystals shot out from his sleeve. They followed a strange trajectory and formed a strange fire formation in front of him. Is that the mysterious fire formation, a rank 4 origin formation? Huang Can's face changed when he saw the fire formation formed by 16 flaming crystals. He did not expect Chen Gang to use only a rank 4 origin formation. Chen Gang actually used the mysterious fire formation. It seems that he really wants to teach this kid a lesson. Many of the surrounding arcana masters clicked their tongues in wonder. This mystic fire formation was quite powerful, and it was said that it was the work of Chen Gang's older brother, Chen Xian. A grade 4 origin formation refined by a grade 5 arcana master was much more powerful than a grade 4 origin formation refined by a grade 4 arcana master. Therefore, when Chen Gang used the mysterious fire formation, the other arcanists in the living room all showed fear. It seems that you are also a rank 4 arcanist. Your mental energy is so powerful. However, this mysterious fire formation was refined by my elder brother, Chen Xian. It is far more powerful than an ordinary rank 4 origin formation. No matter how powerful your mental energy is, you will not be able to resist this mysterious fire formation. Chen Gang's eyes were full of confidence. He had tested the power of the mysterious fire formation time and time again. Even an arcanist at the great perfection of grade 4 had been put into a difficult situation by the mysterious fire formation. Although Zhuowen looked good, he did not think that the former had the ability to resist the mysterious fire formation. Whoosh! Whoosh! 16 blazing crystal stones instantly flew out, wrapping around Zhuowen. 16 terrifying flames gushed out like 16 fire pythons, wrapping Zhuowen's entire body in an attempt to incinerate him. Zhuowen's gaze was extremely calm. With a stomp of his foot, a terrifying aura burst out from his body. This aura transformed into a mountain of corpses, a sea of blood, and an azura hell around him. This was the slaughter momentum that Zhuowen had just comprehended. Clang! Zhuowen flicked his finger, and the 7-kill saber appeared in his hand. He then raised the black saber above his head and slashed down. Suddenly, the killing aura that shrouded his body was drawn by the 7-kill saber, forming a terrifying saber aura. Boom! The 16 flames from the mysterious fire array were immediately extinguished. Then, Zhuowen stepped forward and slashed out with the 7-kill saber in his right hand. The saber shadow wreaked havoc, and the 16 flame crystals around him were directly shattered. This guy is a cultivator? How can his strength be so strong? When Zhuowen released the slaughter momentum, took out the 7-kill saber, and broke the mysterious fire array with 2 slashes, the entire hall quieted down. In fact, when Zhuowen revealed his grade 4 spirit power, it had already surprised many people. After all, Zhuowen was not very old, only around 20 years old. To be able to reach grade 4 spirit power at such an age, his talent was definitely good. In the future, it would not be difficult for him to reach grade 5 spirit power. When everyone's impression of Zhuowen was that he was only a grade 4 arcana master, and when he revealed his terrifying martial strength, it truly shocked everyone. Moreover, they also faintly felt that Zhuowen's martial strength seemed to be much stronger and more terrifying than his spirit power. It wasn't that there weren't any cultivators who cultivated martial arts and spirit power in the Divine Academy, but their cultivation wasn't high. After all, they had to cultivate both martial arts and spirit power. It was very easy to be distracted. Often, They couldn't even take care of themselves, so the progress of both would be dragged down. However, the youth in front of them was a bit of a freak. The height of his spirit power was already much stronger than most of the arcana masters of the same age. His martial strength was even more terrifying than his spirit power. This was definitely a dual cultivation genius that they had never seen before. Dang! 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 Chen Gang groaned and retreated a few steps. His eyes were filled with horror. Zhuowen's martial strength was too terrifying. He actually broke his mysterious fire array with 2 slashes. Courtesy demands reciprocity. Since you attacked me first, then I will properly return the favor. Zhuowen's gaze was indifferent. His eyes flickered with a cold light as he stared at Chen Gang, causing the latter's heart to tremble. Even the mysterious fire array wasn't Zhuowen's opponent, let alone him. Whoosh! With a step, Zhuowen appeared in front of Chen Gang, as if he had teleported. The slaughter momentum poured out like a terrifying bloody mountain, pressing down on Chen Gang's body. The latter's breathing became rapid and his heartbeat quickened. Kill! A slash descended. The slaughter momentum was like the ninth heaven's profound thunder, wanting to completely annihilate Chen Gang. How dare you act so presumptuously in the arcane tower? The green-robed old man behind the counter also saw this scene and roared. With a wave of his sleeve, his complete grade 4 spirit power gushed out and turned into a giant spirit hand. It blasted towards Zhuowen, wanting to block the terrifying blade momentum. A mere grade 4 complete grade dares to obstruct me. Zhuowen's gaze was cold. The blade momentum didn't change as it fiercely slashed down. Then, the green-robed old man's giant spirit hand was actually fragile and shattered. This guy! The green-robed old man's face turned ugly. His right hand changed and condensed another giant spirit hand. He lifted Chen Gang and left the range of the blade momentum. Rumble! The blade momentum landed and blasted at the place where Chen Gang was just now. It actually smashed a deep pit that was almost 10 feet deep. You want to kill Chen Gang? The green-robed old man shouted angrily as he pulled Chen Gang, who was already in a daze and panic, to his side with his right hand. I'm just returning the favor. He didn't show any mercy when he attacked just now. Why should I show mercy to him? Zhuowen said calmly. You're really disgraceful. You dare to violate the rules of the arcane tower in front of me. Do you have no respect for Master Mufeng at all? The green-robed old man was so angry that he trembled. His gaze became extremely gloomy. This young man in front of him was getting more and more presumptuous. As one of the people in charge of the 4th floor, he didn't take him seriously at all. Lu Wei, what's going on? Why is there such a big commotion on the 4th floor? Suddenly, an old man in a blue robe walked out from the inner room, behind the counter on the 4th floor. He frowned slightly, and his eyes were filled with displeasure. Obviously, he had heard the commotion caused by the battle between Zhuowen and Chen Gang. This kid is disgraceful. He openly violated the rules of the arcane tower, and even intended to kill someone. He's truly audacious to the extreme. Master Lan Miao, this kid should be captured. Otherwise, it won't be enough to convince everyone. The green-robed old man revealed a respectful expression when he saw the blue-robed old man that suddenly appeared. He bowed and cupped his hands before pointing at Zhuowen and speaking with a fearful expression. Greetings, Master Lan Miao. The other arcanists in the hall bowed extremely respectfully when they saw the blue-robed old man, and their faces were filled with reverence. Zhuowen's gaze landed on the blue-robed old man as well. The blue-robed old man looked extremely ordinary and didn't have a trace of fierceness on his body. His aura was simple and unadorned, and he seemed like an ordinary little old man. Master Lan Miao's gaze followed the green-robed old man's finger and landed on Zhuowen. The originally indifferent expression in his eyes was instantly replaced by a strand of bright light, and it was as if he'd discovered a rare treasure. What a deep gaze! Zhuowen also noticed Master Lan Miao's gaze, and his pupil shrank slightly. As soon as he came into contact with this pair of eyes, he felt a burst of dizziness, as if he had fallen into a bottomless abyss. This blue-robed old man named Lan Miao was definitely not simple. He gave Zhuowen a very strong sense of crisis. In addition, the green-robed old man and the others looked at Lan Miao with a respectful gaze. Obviously, Lan Miao should be one of the higher-ups of the arcane tower. Brother Zhua. Master Lan Miao is one of the 4 direct disciples of Master Mufeng. He's a 6th grade Great Perfection Grandmaster, and has a pivotal position in the arcane tower. Don't show any disrespect to him. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable. Huang Qin stood beside Zhuowen and explained in a low voice. So he's a 6th grade Great Perfection Grandmaster? Zhuowen's eyes revealed a look of understanding. Lan Miao's mental strength cultivation was similar to Elder Shiwan's, but Zhuowen could keenly feel that Lan Miao's aura was much more terrifying than Elder Shiwan's. Obviously, Lan Miao had probably touched the barrier of the arcane heavenly master realm. Lan Miao directly arrived in front of Zhuowen, his deep gaze directly sizing up Zhuowen, a trace of contemplation on his face. Master Lan Miao, you have to uphold justice for me. This boy almost killed me just now. If it weren't for Senior Luli, I would have died on the spot. Chen Gang also recovered from his shock, hurriedly walked to Master Lan Miao's side, and accused Zhuowen. Yes, Master Lan Miao, you can't let him go. He has repeatedly violated the rules of the arcane tower. This is already a provocation to Master Mufeng. For such an audacious person, we can't tolerate it. The green-robed old man also came out to accuse. Zhuowen frowned slightly, secretly on guard. He was also a little worried that Master Lan Miao would really attack him if he listened to Chen Gang and Lu Li's words. Master Lan Miao's strength was comparable to an Emperor Realm martial artist. He was not so easy to deal with. Master Lan Miao simply ignored the noisy Lu Li and Chen Gang beside him. Instead, he stared at Zhuowen and said with a smile, "Little brother, are you willing to be my last disciple?" As soon as this remark came out, Zhuowen was stunned. He didn't expect that Lan Miao's first sentence in front of him was to accept him as his last disciple. Not only Zhuowen, but even Huang Qin, who was beside Zhuowen, Lu Li, Chen Gang, Luo Xiang, and the other people on the 4th floor were all stunned at this moment. Many of them even subconsciously dug their ears, doubting that they had heard wrong. Chapter 1073. Accepting a disciple, Master Lan Miao. This boy is ruthless, arrogant, and has no regard for the law. He must not be accepted as a disciple. Otherwise, he will inevitably become the scum of the arcane tower in the future. Chen Gang reacted and couldn't help but scream. Grandmaster Lan Miao's brows knit together slightly. Chen Gang's shouting caused him to be extremely displeased, and he said indifferently, "Could it be that you're not arrogant, conceited, and have no regard for the law by shouting at me like this? Aren't you even rebelling against your superiors?" As soon as Master Lan Miao said this, Chen Gang was suddenly speechless and did not dare to speak. The green-robed old man also did not dare to speak. Chen Gang's words just now had already made Master Lan Miao extremely unhappy. He was unwilling to interfere and offend Master Lan Miao for Chen Gang. "Little brother, what is your name?" Master Lan Miao turned to Zhuowen and asked again. "Zhuowen." Zhuowen replied in a low voice. "Good. Zhuowen, now I will ask again. Are you willing to be my last disciple?" Master Lan Miao said with a smile. Zhuowen fell into deep thought. Perhaps Master Lan Miao saw through his mental strength cultivation, so he suddenly put forward such a request to accept a disciple. After all, a mental strength of perfect grade 5 at the age of 20 was definitely a genius among geniuses. No senior would be willing to let go of such a genius disciple. Moreover, Zhuowen's previous knowledge of refining yuan arrays was all based on the yuan array knowledge he had exchanged. In fact, this kind of self-study had many disadvantages. When he encountered a problem that he did not know, Zhuowen had to spend a lot of time thinking. Refining a grade 4 yuan array was fine, but if the grade of the yuan array reached grade 5, Zhuowen's process of refining the yuan array would be full of loopholes. In fact, the best way to correct these mistakes was to have a good teacher. Zhuowen had actually intended to become Master Mufeng's disciple when he joined the Arcana Tower. Unfortunately, Master Mufeng was on the 7th floor of the Arcana Tower, and he was always elusive. So becoming Master Mufeng's disciple was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Master Lan Miao in front of him was one of Master Mu Feng's personal disciples. His mental strength cultivation was also extremely good. In fact, it was not a bad idea to become Master Lan Miao's disciple. After all, with a good teacher to teach him, his level of refining yuan arrays would definitely improve quickly. Have you thought it over? Master Lan Miao was not in a hurry. He also saw the look in Zhuo Wen's eyes. He knew that the young man in front of him was thinking about the pros and cons. The reason he proposed to take Zhuo Wen in as a disciple was mainly because of Zhuo Wen's age and the powerful mental energy hidden in his body. If he guessed correctly, Zhuo Wen's mental energy might have reached grade 5 or above. To be able to reach the 5th rank at the age of 20, this kind of talent was probably on par with that monster from the arcane tower. Zhuo Wen nodded and said, "I'm glad that Senior doesn't dislike me. I'm willing to become Senior's disciple." After thinking for a long time, Zhuo Wen finally agreed to become Lan Miao's last disciple. Lan Miao's status in the arcane tower was extremely high. His mental strength was also very frightening. There were absolutely no disadvantages to becoming his last disciple. Although Lan Miao's eyes were deep, his body revealed a trace of awe-inspiring righteousness. Obviously, he was not a despicable villain. Lan Miao accepted Zhuo Wen as his disciple purely out of love for talent. Haha, not bad. Now you have to call me master. Lan Miao nodded. His eyes contained a strong sense of satisfaction. Master, this is my friend. His name is Huang Can. Can you accept him as well? Zhuo Wen suddenly pointed to Huang Can beside him and said to Lan Miao. Huang Can obviously did not expect that Zhuo Wen actually intended to recommend him to Lan Miao. His mind was in a mess. He waved his hand and said, "Brother Zhuo, my talent is not good enough, Master Lan Miao." Lan Miao glanced at Huang Can indifferently and said, "Since it's your idea, accepting him is fine. However, he's only an in-name disciple for now. If you can successfully advance to a 4th grade Arcana Master, I will promote him to an official disciple." Really? Huang Can was stunned. He immediately clenched his fists in excitement. He did not expect Lan Miao to really accept him. Although he was only an in-name disciple, what kind of existence was Lan Miao? Even if he was only an in-name disciple, he was an existence that no one in the Arcane Tower dared to provoke. Moreover, although Huang Can was only an in-name disciple now, once he advanced to a 4th grade Arcana Master in the future, he would be promoted to an official disciple. At that time, his status would be even higher. Who would dare to offend an official disciple of Lan Miao? Chen Gang, Lu Li and Luo Xiang were stunned. When did Master Lan Miao become so easy to talk to? This Zhuo Wen asked him to accept Huang Can, and he really did not hesitate to accept him. This Master Lan Miao valued Zhuo Wen too much, right? Among them, Luo Xiang's beautiful eyes were the most complicated. In the past, Huang Can pursued her, and the two of them also had a relationship. However, because of her own vanity, Luo Xiang resolutely left Huang Can's side and threw herself into Chen Gang's arms. Not only because Chen Gang had a 5th grade Arcana Master as his elder brother, but Chen Gang's mental strength cultivation was also higher than Huang Can's. Leading her to the 4th floor would help her quickly improve her mental strength cultivation. But now, Huang Can was actually directly accepted as an in-name disciple by Master Lan Miao, and he would be promoted to an official disciple in the future. Master Lan Miao was a 6th grade Grand Master. To be able to become the disciple of such a Grand Master, his future achievements would definitely not be weak, and no one in the Arcane Tower would dare to provoke him. It could be said that the current Huang Can was like a salted fish turning over a new leaf. His status was much higher than Chen Gang's. If Huang Can advanced to a 4th grade Arcana Master and became an official disciple of Master Lan Miao, perhaps Chen Gang's elder brother, Chen Xian, would not necessarily have a higher status than Huang Can. Now Luo Xiang's heart was faintly regretting. She wanted to stop Huang Can, but she was afraid of Chen Gang. In the end, she just stood there, somewhat at a loss. From beginning to end, Huang Can didn't even look at Luo Xiang, causing the latter to faintly feel pain in her heart. "You two come with me to the inner room first," Master Lan Miao said to Zhuo Wen and Huang Can. and the two followed Master Lan Miao into the inner room under the envious gazes of many people in the living room. In the slightly dark inner room, Grandmaster Lan Miao stopped in front of Zhuo Wen and Huang Can. His eyes were bright as he stared at Zhuo Wen and said, "Release all the spiritual power in your Muwan Palace and let me see." Zhuo Wen nodded and did not refuse. His right hand touched his glabella, and suddenly, a terrifying mental strength began to spread throughout the inner room like a monstrous tsunami. Under the influence of this terrifying mental strength, the huge inner room faintly trembled. What a terrifying mental strength! Brother Zhuo's mental strength is actually above the 4th grade. Could it be the 5th grade? Feeling the mental strength gushing out of Zhuo Wen's body, Huang Can's legs trembled, and he almost fell to the ground. His eyes were finally filled with horror. Master Lan Miao's eyes also narrowed slightly, and he couldn't help but exclaim in a low voice, "Your mental strength has reached the 5th grade grand perfection? It seems that I still underestimated you before." 5th grade grand perfection? Huang Can's heart trembled, and his hands unconsciously trembled. This must be a joke. Zhuo Wen was younger than him by 3 years, but his mental strength was already 2 realms higher than his. Was this still a height that a human could reach? He finally knew why Master Lan Miao valued Zhuo Wen so much. If he was Master Lan Miao, he would definitely accept such a monstrous genius without hesitation. Haha, it seems that my luck is pretty good to actually be able to accept a genius like you. If the other 3 old fellows were to know about this, I'm afraid their jaws would drop. Grandmaster Lan Miao laughed heartily as he looked at Zhuo Wen with increasing satisfaction. At the age of 20, mental strength had reached the 5th grade grand perfection. This was definitely an unimaginable achievement. If such an unpolished jade was carved well, his future would be limitless. Good. Zhuo Wen, you're very good. Master Lan Miao said a few good words, and immediately calmed down, and said, "Looking at your mental strength, I'm afraid it won't take long for you to break through to the 6th grade, right?" Zhuo Wen smiled bitterly and said, "Teacher, how can it be so easy to break through to the 6th grade? Although I stayed at the 5th grade grand perfection for a while, I haven't touched the barrier of the 6th grade yet. Don't worry, you will break through to the 6th grade soon." Master Lan Miao revealed a confident smile. Then, with a shake of his sleeve, a simple jade token fell into Zhuo Wen's hand. He chuckled and said, 3 days later, bring this jade token and come to the 5th floor to find me. I'll leave first. Remember to come to the 5th floor of the Arcane Tower to find me in 3 days. After saying this, Master Lan Miao floated away, leaving only Zhuo Wen and Huang Can in the inner room looking at each other. They didn't understand what Master Lan Miao meant by this. "It seems that we can only go and see the situation in 3 days. Zhuo Wen shook his head and whispered, "Brother Zhuo, this time, I can become Master Lan Miao's registered disciple all because of you. I don't know what to say to thank you." Huang Can cupped his hands to Zhuo Wen and said sincerely, "You don't have to. You've helped me a lot before. And you even personally introduced me to the details of this arcane tower. Since you treat me as a friend, I, Zhuo Wen, will naturally treat you as a friend as well." Zhuo Wen chuckled. Hearing this, Huang Can's eyes were full of vigor. He cupped his hands and said cautiously, "Brother Zhuo, this Huang will never forget today's kindness. We should also go." Zhuo Wen nodded. Immediately, the two left the inner room side by side and reappeared in the 4th floor's living room. At this moment, there were still many arcanists standing in the living room. These were all onlookers. Chen Gang, Lu Li and Luo Xiang didn't leave. The appearance of Zhuo Wen and Huang Can immediately attracted everyone's attention. "Brother Zhuo Wen, Brother Huang Can, congratulations on becoming Master Lan Miao's disciple. There is hope for a meteoric rise in the future." As soon as the two came out, Lu Li hurried forward with a flattering smile on her face. Zhuo Wen's eyes were indifferent, and he spat out a word indifferently, "Scram." The green-robed old man's cupped hands stiffened, and the smile on his face suddenly froze. His eyes were gloomy and uncertain as he retreated dejectedly. He didn't dare to talk to Zhuo Wen and Huang Can again. Now that Zhuo Wen and Huang Can's status was different from before, he didn't dare to offend them like before. Chapter 1074. Surprise. After walking out of the arcane tower, Zhuowen bid farewell to Huang Qin in the plaza and left first, walking towards the residence of the new students. After half a year of bitter training, Zhuowen missed the quiet bamboo forest where the new students resided. I wonder how Jianan Gatha, Ling Tian and Xian Xing have been doing in the past half a year? I wonder what level their cultivations have reached. The corners of Zhuowen's mouth raised slightly. His footsteps quickened as he walked back to the new student's residence. However, when he walked into the quiet bamboo forest where the new students resided, he immediately saw many of the new students with dejected gazes and swollen faces, as if they had been beaten up. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed slightly as a trace of an ominous feeling rose in his heart. This was because the majority of the new students he met along the way had swollen faces and numb gazes. What surprised him even more was that the cultivations of most of these new students had actually stagnated and did not increase at all. It was as if these new students had not cultivated at all in the past half a year, and some of their cultivations had even regressed due to some internal injuries. What happened in the new student's residence? Zhuowen pulled a new student who had lowered his head and a face full of dejection beside him, and asked with a frown. The new student raised his head slightly, his gaze filled with numbness. However, when he saw Zhuowen's face, the numbness in his eyes immediately faded away, and a trace of a strange expression was revealed. Moreover, this strange expression also contained a trace of anger and hatred. Zhuowen naturally saw the emotions in the new student's eyes with a glance. What made him feel strange was why the new student's gaze would be filled with hatred when he saw him. Zhuowen did not know him at all before this. Zhuowen, you've hidden for half a year and finally appeared. It's you who caused us to be like this. It's all your fault. Suddenly, the new student grabbed Zhuowen's right hand and shouted with an agitated expression. His voice was very loud, and the entire bamboo forest could hear him clearly. As for the other new students in the bamboo forest, all of them raised their heads and actually gathered towards Zhuowen like cats that had smelled the fragrance of fish. As expected, it's Zhuowen. You coward has finally appeared. Good for you, hiding for half a year and causing us to suffer. Yes, it's all because of you. We new students have been bullied for half a year. You are the shame of us new students. Let's capture this sinner and hand him over to the Emperor Pavilion. Perhaps then we will be free and not be bullied again. Numerous passionate voices rang out. More and more new students gathered in the surroundings, and all of them were glaring at Zhuowen with anger in their eyes. It was as though they had an undying grudge with Zhuowen. In fact, there were even some new students who directly attacked Zhuowen. Zhuowen's gaze grew colder and colder. A towering killing intent gushed forth as he directly unleashed his killing intent. This killing intent grew more and more terrifying, and it was as though numerous terrifying gigantic mountains were descending from the heavens. The new students, who were originally in high spirits and had even wanted to take action, all revealed expressions of fear under the influence of this killing momentum. Their bodies stiffened, and they were unable to move. This killing momentum was too terrifying. It was as if there was a mountain pressing down on their hearts at all times. It ruthlessly squeezed their hearts, causing them to not dare to act rashly. Pudong, pudong. The killing intent grew increasingly terrifying. Finally, there were some new students who could no longer endure it. They directly knelt on the ground as their eyes were filled with terror and agony. As for the other new students, it was as though there was a domino effect. All of them knelt on the ground as their bodies trembled. It was extremely difficult for them to even move. At this moment, Zhuowen's gaze was cold and emotionless. A line of blood appeared in his eyes, containing a dense bloodlust. Everywhere his gaze passed by, those new students who knelt on the ground would all lower their heads while trembling, not daring to match his gaze. Only now did these new students realize what sort of existence Zhuowen was. He was the #1 new student back then. The moment he entered the outer academy, he already dared to snatch the position of a senior. They basically couldn't afford to offend him. Now, I'm asking you a question. If you don't answer, you should know the consequences. Zhuowen arrived in front of the new student from before, and looked down at him from above. His voice was filled with extremely cold killing intent. That new student propped his hands on the ground and knelt before Zhuowen. His forehead was filled with sweat, and he didn't dare to move. Tell me, what exactly happened in the dormitory of the new students? Zhuowen continued asking. That new student inclined his head and stared at Zhuowen, who had a cold gaze. His entire body trembled violently, and he didn't hide anything as he narrated everything that happened in the dormitory of the new students. As for Zhuowen, the more he listened, the gloomier his expression became. So it turned out that the cause of this matter was because of the third pavilion lord of the Emperor Pavilion, Lu Qing. Back then at the public square outside the cultivation pagoda, Zhuowen had defeated Lu Xiang in front of everyone. Not only that, he had even snatched away Du Tao's contribution points. In the eyes of the Emperor Pavilion, this was an extremely arrogant provocation. Back then, because of Cheng Dong's appearance and the influence of the Fragrant Ink Pavilion, Lu Qing didn't deal with Zhuowen. However, this didn't mean that the Emperor Pavilion would let Zhuowen off because of this. After that, the Emperor Pavilion wanted to get back at them. Soon after, Lu Qing planned to bring people to the new students' dormitory to find trouble with Zhuowen. However, at that time, Zhuowen had already left to complete a mission. Hence, Lu Qing and the rest didn't meet with Zhuowen. At that time, the Emperor Pavilion didn't do anything out of line to the new students. After that, because of the matter with Jia Nan and the rest, Zhuowen didn't stay in the new students' dormitory for long. He once again headed to West Path City. Even after returning from West Path City, Zhuowen didn't return to the new students' dormitory. Instead, he directly went into seclusion in the cultivation pagoda for half a year. It could be said that during this half a year, Zhuowen wasn't in the new students' dormitory for a single day. As for Zhuowen's whereabouts, the Emperor Pavilion, who originally planned to wait for him at the new students' dormitory, finally lost their patience. Half a year ago, the Emperor Pavilion sent many people to the new students' dormitory to snatch the contribution points from the new students. Some of the more stubborn new students even had to pay the price of being beaten black and blue. Basically, all the new students in the new students' dormitory had been snatched by the Emperor Pavilion. In fact, when those people from the Emperor Pavilion were snatching the contribution points from the new students, they unceasingly clamored. The reason why they had so many contribution points was all because of Zhuowen's cowardice. For an entire half a year, the new students could be said to have suffered unspeakably. The contribution points that they painstakingly earned were all snatched away the moment they returned to the dormitory. Although there were some new students who were clever and purposely didn't return to the dormitory, it was a pity that the Emperor Pavilion's information network was extremely powerful. Those new students who were snatched away were basically recorded by the Emperor Pavilion. They weren't even allowed to hide. It could be said that the reason why the Emperor Pavilion tortured these new students was ultimately because of Zhuowen. After all, Zhuowen was the #1 new student in this batch. In a certain sense, he was the representative of the new students. Since they couldn't find Zhuowen, the Emperor Pavilion vented their anger on the new students. It was also because of this reason that the new students cursed Zhuowen everywhere. The majority of the new students hated Zhuowen. If it wasn't for Zhuowen, they wouldn't be in such a miserable state for the past half a year. You all hate me? After hearing the narration of this new student, Zhuowen glanced at his surroundings and suddenly laughed as he asked. However, no one replied. After not seeing him for half a year, this Zhuowen's strength seemed to have grown by a lot. Just the aura he emitted was enough to cause them to be unable to breathe. I know you all hate me, but is there any use in hating me? Was it me, Zhuowen, who snatched your contribution points? No. Was it me who tortured you all into this state? No. Everything you did was because of the Emperor Pavilion's actions. What's laughable is that you all actually hate me because of this. What a cowardly mindset and resolution. Hence, you all are destined to be weaklings. You all have no resolution, yet you still want to vainly attempt to become experts. You all are filled with self-pity, and even pushed all the blame onto someone else, using this as an excuse to escape back then. Don't you all find it laughable? After saying these words, the murderous aura on Zhuowen's body slowly withdrew. Soon after, he slowly walked past those kneeling on the ground, and headed towards the depths of the bamboo forest. If among these new students, there was one who directed their hatred towards the Emperor Pavilion and used this hatred to motivate themselves, unceasingly strengthening themselves, Zhuowen might have acted to help them. However, none of these new students did so. Not a single one of them did so. When they encountered difficulties, their first thought was to escape or to find an excuse. For example, they weren't willing to face the Emperor Pavilion, hence, they pushed all the blame onto Zhuowen. This was a type of escape and an excuse. The new students who were kneeling in the bamboo forest stood up one after another. Their gazes focused on Zhuowen's back as he left. Their faces revealed a guilty and pensive expression. Zhuowen's words from earlier seemed to have enlightened them, dispelling the hatred in their hearts. Zhuowen's words were very correct. The one they hated shouldn't be Zhuowen, but should be the Emperor Pavilion instead. Because from their personal standpoint, what Zhuowen did wasn't wrong. The Emperor Pavilion oppressed him, he naturally had to retaliate. Could it be that they wanted Zhuowen to resign himself to death? Also, the Emperor Pavilion kept saying that it was because of Zhuowen that the Emperor Pavilion snatched them away. In fact, this reason wasn't valid at all. The Emperor Pavilion was merely using Zhuowen as an excuse to blatantly snatch the new students away. Even if there wasn't Zhuowen, the Emperor Pavilion would still use other excuses to snatch the new students away. Such an ending wouldn't change. Zhuowen, Jianan, Gatha, Xianxing, and Lingtian have already returned to the dorms of the new students. Coincidentally, the Emperor Pavilion is also here today. All of a sudden, the new student who was questioned shouted at Zhuowen's back. Many thanks for the reminder. Zhuowen's figure turned sluggish as a trace of coldness flashed in his eyes. He nodded, and after saying a sentence, his figure increased in speed as he rushed towards the dorms in the depths of the bamboo forest. At this moment, in the empty space in front of the dorms of the new students, a large group of people had gathered. Within this large group of people, two groups of people were eyeing each other covetously. One side had a lot of people, about 20+ people, while the other side had very few people, only 4. In terms of numbers, they were completely unequal. Yo, I thought it was that coward Zhuowen who had returned. I didn't expect that the 4 dogs of that fellow would return. Seems like our luck isn't bad. Chapter 1075. Arrived. If Zhuowen was here, he would definitely be able to recognize that this black-robed sexy lady was Lu Xiang, who he had defeated back then. At this moment, Lu Xiang's sparkling autumn eyes were filled with mockery. 4 figures stood in front of her, and all 4 of them were furiously staring at Lu Xiang. Lu Xiang, what do you mean by calling yourself the Emperor Pavilion? Lingtian frowned slightly and coldly said. Jianan, Gatha, and Xianxing glared furiously at Lu Xiang. The 4 of them had just come out from their seclusion and returned to the new student dormitory when they were surrounded by the members of the Emperor Pavilion led by Lu Xiang. What do we mean? Zhuowen has been hiding in our Emperor Pavilion for half a year and has yet to appear. Tell us where that coward is. Also, you 4 dogs of Zhuowen. Back then, Zhuowen caused our Emperor Pavilion to lose all face. We still have to settle this debt. Since that coward isn't going to appear, let's collect some interest from you 4 dogs. Lu Xiang's pretty eyes coldly stared at Lingtian's group. Her eyes were filled with mockery. You better watch your mouth. What's the difference between you and a shrew now? Jianan's face was flushed red as he angrily said. What did you just say? You actually dared to call me a shrew? Lu Xiang's pretty face immediately darkened. She stomped her foot and instantly arrived in front of Jianan like a bolt of black lightning. Her jade-like right palm struck out and ruthlessly imprinted itself on Jianan's face. Jianan's expression changed slightly. He did not expect that Lu Xiang would actually directly attack him. He was caught off guard and could only raise his hand to block. Unfortunately, Lu Xiang's palm was too quick. It actually swept past Jianan's raised right hand and heavily slapped Jianan's right cheek. Slap. A clear slap sound appeared. Jianan's right cheek swelled up, and he was directly knocked to the ground by the huge force of this slap. Stomp. The instant Jianan fell to the ground, Lu Xiang lifted her right leg and ruthlessly stomped on Jianan's chest. This caused Jianan to groan, and a trace of blood flowed out from his mouth. Kanan. Lu Xiang's movements were too fast. By the time Mo Lingtian and the other two reacted, Kanan was already under Lu Xiang's foot. In this half a year, although the four of them often went into seclusion, and their strength had increased, Lu Xiang was still an early Empyrean martial artist. The gap between their realms could not be bridged. Whoosh! Whoosh! Just as Mo Lingtian and the other two were about to move and rescue Jianan, who was being stepped on by Lu Xiang, 3 figures from the 20 Emperor Pavilion members behind Lu Xiang rushed out and blocked Mo Lingtian and the other two. Scram! Mo Lingtian shouted angrily. His cultivation had improved a lot in the past 6 months. He had reached the late stage of the Golden Exalt realm. At this moment, the aura on his body was much stronger than before. However, his opponents were not weak either. Their realms were even higher than his. They were at the peak of the Golden Exalt realm. Even though Mo Lingtian used his strongest attack, he was still unable to break through their defense. Gatha and Xianxing's opponents were not weak either. They were all above the Golden Exalt realm. They were firmly entangled with the two of them, and did not give them any chance to get close to Jianan and Lu Xiang. Is this the strength of that coward Zhuowen's 4 dogs? With such weak strength, it's no wonder that the 4 of you can only become Zhuowen's lackeys. Lu Xiang laughed unscrupulously. I won't allow you to slander our relationship with Big Brother Zhuo. Jianan roared. A ray of light surged out from between his eyebrows. Then the injuries on his body instantly healed. At the same time, a huge force came and pushed Lu Xiang's right leg away. Jianan took advantage of the momentum and rolled, dodging Lu Xiang's next attack. What a strange armor soul. Lu Xiang's body swayed slightly before she easily stabilized herself. Her beautiful eyes stared at Jianan in astonishment. At this moment, Jianan's entire body was covered by a lustrous green light. The green light contained boundless vitality and surging power. It was as if Jianan, who was covered by the green light, was filled with vitality like a towering tree. The green light was formless and shapeless. It was just a lustrous ball of light without any shape. This was the manifestation of Jianan's undying armor soul. The undying armor soul did not have a shape to begin with. However, it contained an extremely dense vitality. This boundless vitality could allow a cultivator to instantly recover from their injuries. Under certain conditions, they could also explode with terrifying power. After half a year of closed-door cultivation, Jianan's cultivation had already stepped into the initial stage of the Golden Exalt realm. He had also become more familiar with the usage of the armor soul on his body. As he understood the armor soul on his body, Jianan increasingly discovered how extraordinary it was. As long as he did not injure any vital parts, the injuries in his body could be healed in an extremely short period of time. Furthermore, it would sometimes be accompanied by the emotions in his body, granting him additional strength. Furthermore, Jianan believed that if his cultivation continued to increase, the mysterious armor soul on his body would also become stronger and more obvious. Bang! A muffled groan rang out. The initial stage Golden Exalt realm cultivator, who had blocked Gatha's path, was sent flying by the Heaven's Wrath armor soul's attack. He spat out a mouthful of blood and crashed heavily onto the ground. This little girl's armor soul is also extraordinary. She's clearly only at the advanced stage of the Golden Exalt realm. How could she defeat an initial stage Golden Exalt realm cultivator so easily? Lu Xiang's beautiful eyes revealed a trace of surprise when she saw the mysterious human-shaped armor soul standing in front of Gatha. This Gatha's strength was actually much more mysterious and powerful than Jianan's. Du Tao, attack! Capture this little girl for me. There's no need to hold back. The armor soul on her body is extraordinary, Lu Xiang said to the crowd behind her, before she continued to fly towards Jianan. Earlier on, Jianan, a mere Golden Exalt realm cultivator, had slipped away from her hands. This made Lu Xiang feel extremely embarrassed. She would definitely get back at him for this. In the crowd, the corners of Du Tao's mouth curled into a sinister smile. His gaze was fixed on Gatha as he coldly said, "Like dog, like person. It's fine that Zhuowen is arrogant, but the four of you are also so arrogant. How dare you defy us and claim that we are working for the Emperor Pavilion? Boom. As he spoke, Du Tao's peak golden exalt realm aura surged out. With a stomp of his foot, he directly flew towards Gatha. At that moment, Gatha's beautiful eyes were filled with a solemn look. Although her Heaven's Wrath armor soul was extraordinary, Du Tao's cultivation was much higher than hers. She was only at the advanced stage of the Golden Exalt realm, while Du Tao was at the peak of the Golden Exalt realm. There was a huge gap between them and their strength. Boom, boom, boom. Du Tao's attacks were extremely sharp. He used his full strength right from the start. The howling fist wind seemed to tear apart space as it swept out. Terrifying fist force unceremoniously smashed towards the Heaven's Wrath armor soul. The mysterious human figure that was hidden in the wind and snow clasped his hands together. The chains that bound his body suddenly surged out, forming a thick chain shield in front of him. Bang! 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 Du Tao's attacks also arrived as expected. Extremely tyrannical fist after fist smashed against the chain shield. The sound of metal clashing continuously rang out as terrifying power surged out. The Heaven's Wrath armor soul couldn't help but retreat. However, it didn't show any signs of being defeated. It was only in a disadvantageous position. On the other hand, Mo Lingtian and Xian Xing were fighting against their respective opponents. They were in a stalemate. The most miserable one was Jianan. His battle with Lu Xiang was completely one-sided. Every attack from Lu Xiang was able to injure Jianan and cause him to vomit blood. However, Jianan was like a cockroach that couldn't be killed. Every time he was knocked down, he would be able to crawl back up and continue his battle with Lu Xiang. Although he was being abused in this battle, Jianan was extremely stubborn. This brat is really annoying. Lu Xiang furrowed her brows. With a cold snort, she suddenly threw a palm forward. Her palm turned jade-colored. She had actually used the jade steel palm that she had used against Zhuowen. This palm seemed to have shuttled through the empty space, as it instantly arrived in front of Jianan and heavily smashed onto his chest. After which, Jianan's waist bent as he was sent flying dozens of meters away like a cooked prawn. Bang! Let's see if you can still crawl back up after receiving my jade steel palm. Lu Xiang coldly said. Sure enough, Jianan was no longer crawling back up as lively as before. Instead, his chest was heaving up and down. His breathing was rough like an old cow pulling a cart. The green light on his body had already become a little dim. Clearly, after so many heavy blows, the undying armor soul on Jianan's body should have reached its limit. A trace of pride was revealed from the corners of Lu Xiang's mouth. She slowly walked in front of Jianan and looked down at him from above. She said, Continue crawling back up. Why aren't you crawling back up? Jianan's eyes drooped. He felt that his head was very heavy at this moment. He wanted to crawl back up, but he felt that his entire body was powerless. He was unable to move at all. Since you can't crawl back up, I will not be courteous and accept your contribution points. Lu Xiang chuckled. She extended her right hand with the intention of snatching the contribution points from Jianan's contribution counter. Chi! A black figure suddenly cut through the sky, just as Lu Xiang was about to deprive Jianan of his contribution points. Immediately, it carried a sharp sound of tearing air as it suddenly shot between Lu Xiang and Jianan. Immediately, an intense explosion rose and dense dust spread in front of Lu Xiang. Lu Xiang frowned slightly and took a couple of steps back. She looked at the dust that spread in front of her and suddenly waved her hand. A frightening palm wind whizzed out and rushed past the dust that permeated the area in front of her, blowing away all the dust that had blocked her sight. When the dust had completely dispersed, a long black saber with complicated runes engraved on it appeared in Lu Xiang's line of sight. Lu Xiang's gaze paused on this long black blade for a moment. She raised her eyes slightly and saw a figure slowly descending from the sky. Her pretty eyes immediately became gloomy. Zhuowen, a coward like you finally dares to come out? The corner of Lu Xiang's mouth was lifted slightly. She revealed a cold smile as she spoke in an indifferent voice. Zhuowen slowly descended in front of the 7-killing blade. He ignored Lu Xiang's mocking words. Instead, he glanced at the pale-faced Jianan below him as a cold glint flashed in his eyes. Big brother Zhua, you are finally here. Jianan spat out these words with great difficulty. His breathing had become even more hurried. I am here. Leave the rest to me. Chapter 1076. Overwhelming strength. Lu Xiang narrowed her beautiful eyes. Zhuowen's disregard for her had caused traces of anger to surface in her heart. After stopping Jianan's injuries, Zhuowen turned his gaze towards Lu Xiang and asked in an indifferent voice, "Why isn't Lu Qing here?" Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Zhuowen's arrival naturally caused the surrounding atmosphere to become a lot more solemn. The eyes of Mo Lingtian, Gatha and Xian Xing, who were originally engaged in an intense battle, brightened as they rushed behind Zhuowen and coldly stared at Lu Xiang's group. Du Tao and the other two also retreated and stood behind Lu Xiang. Similarly, their gazes were filled with hostility. Pfft, you think too highly of yourself. My big brother is a monster on the heavenly sovereign list. Who do you think you are? You merely obtained the first place amongst the new students. Do you dare to arrogantly challenge my big brother? Do you have the qualifications? Lu Xiang sneered. Oh, as someone who was defeated by me back then, do you have the qualifications to challenge me? The corners of Zhuowen's mouth slightly curled as he said with a faint smile. Sure enough, Lu Xiang's pretty face stiffened when she heard his words. A trace of coldness gradually surfaced in her beautiful eyes. Last time, you were lucky enough to win by one move. Do you really think that I'm someone who was defeated by you? I think you'll regret your words in a while. Lu Xiang's jade-like foot stomped on the ground as an aura erupted from her body like a volcano. Her beautiful eyes were filled with a chilling aura. I see. Looks like your cultivation has improved over the past half a year. You're not far from the intermediate heavenly sovereign stage. Feeling the stronger aura within Lu Xiang's body, Zhuowen's eyes were filled with astonishment. Although Lu Xiang had not broken through to the intermediate heavenly sovereign stage, she was extremely close. When she fought with him back then, her aura had increased by a lot. It was no wonder that she was so confident when she faced Zhuowen again. Unfortunately, Lu Xiang was not the only one who had improved. Zhuowen was also improving, and the extent of his improvement was far beyond Lu Xiang's imagination. Hearing Zhuowen's somewhat surprised words, Lu Xiang gently lifted her chin. Her beautiful eyes carried a trace of pride. After all, Zhuowen was an expert who had defeated her. In her heart, he was considered a cultivator who she recognized. Lu Xiang was quite proud of herself for being able to make him reveal a surprised expression. Do you know the difference now? Since you know, I believe you are a smart person. Hand over your contribution points and follow us to the Emperor Pavilion to apologize, said Lu Xiang calmly. Apologize? I don't think you're qualified. Zhuowen slowly took a step forward, and a surging aura burst out. It was like a giant wave rolling on the surface of the sea, suppressing the surrounding air, causing everyone's hearts to stagnate, as if they were suffocating. Peak of the Golden Venerable Realm? How did you advance so quickly? Lu Xiang's beautiful eyes suddenly stiffened. She stared at the young man in front of her, her mouth slightly open as she exclaimed. Back then, Zhuowen had defeated her, who was at the initial Heavenly Venerable Realm, when he was at the initial Golden Venerable Realm. Now she was still at the initial Heavenly Venerable Realm, but the latter was already at the peak of the Golden Venerable Realm. Needless to say, Zhuowen's fighting strength was definitely much more terrifying than half a year ago. Lu Xiang's heart began to tremble. She felt an extremely heavy pressure. This was caused by Zhuowen's aura. This pressure had far surpassed the peak of the Golden Venerable Realm. Even she did not dare to resist. Boom! When Zhuowen finally arrived in front of Lu Xiang, a strange murderous aura suddenly erupted. In an instant, with Zhuowen as the center, a terrifying scene of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood fell into 100 feet radius. Lu Xiang raised her head and saw an endless amount of blood. The pungent smell of blood continuously swept over, causing her delicate body to tremble. Her legs went soft, and she almost knelt on the ground. As for the 20-plus members of the Emperor Pavilion behind Lu Xiang, Their condition was even worse than Lu Xiang's. Fear could be seen in their eyes, and some of them even knelt on the ground, hugging their heads with their hands. Their faces were filled with pain. Slap. Zhuowen raised his right hand high and slowly brought it down. It landed heavily on Lu Xiang's right cheek. A clear slap resounded and spread across the entire open space. Lu Xiang held her right cheek. The burning pain that came from it instantly woke her up from the murderous aura. Her eyes froze for a moment before they regained their clarity. How dare you hit me? The expression in Lu Xiang's beautiful eyes changed several times. In the end, it was filled with anger. She could not help but shout at Zhuowen. I am returning this slap on behalf of Jia Nan. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with indifference. When he was checking on Jia Nan's injuries earlier, he had naturally seen the large bruise on Jia Nan's face. This bruise was clearly caused by someone slapping him. Other than Lu Xiang, no one else would do such a thing. Bastard! Even if your progress is fast, you are after all merely at the Golden Sovereign stage. I don't believe that you are a match for me. Lu Xiang was flustered and exasperated. Her jade-like foot pushed off the ground, like a dancing butterfly. She instantly arrived in front of Zhuowen. Her right hand formed a palm and transformed into a wisp of jade. It seemed to penetrate through the void and instantly reached Zhuowen's chest. It did not stop there. Zhuowen's expression was indifferent. He waved his right hand. Immediately, the 7 murders blade hummed and countless blade shadows swept out. The surrounding murderous aura poured into the 7 murders blade, causing the sharpness of the blade to become increasingly terrifying. Bloodlight flashed and blocked in front of Zhuowen's chest. It coincidentally blocked Lu Xiang's jade-like palm that was rushing over. Bang! The sound of metal clashing resounded. The jade-like palm heavily smashed against the 7 murders blade. Lu Xiang's pupils shrunk as she discovered that waves of terrifying murderous aura were emitted from the 7 murders blade and attached to her right palm. Retreat! Lu Xiang cried out. Her jade-like foot pushed off the ground, and she immediately flew backwards. Her speed soared to the extreme. However, the murderous aura of the 7 murders blade was like a maggot that stuck to Lu Xiang's bones. It was impossible to shake it off. What a strange power! After retreating dozens of steps, Lu Xiang finally completely dispersed the murderous aura attached to her hand. However, the terrifying power of the murderous aura caused her right hand to tremble violently. The web between her thumb and forefinger faintly showed signs of cracking. Slash! Zhuowen took advantage of the opportunity to pursue and attack. He did not give Lu Xiang any chance to catch her breath. In an instant, he was in front of Lu Xiang. The 7 murders blade in his right hand flicked upwards. Blade aura spread and swept out a wild wind. Lu Xiang's pretty face slightly changed. Her palms turned into a tough jade-like color. At the same time, a jade-like ray of light shot out from between her eyebrows and shot into her palms. Instantly, a jade-like palm shadow was formed on her palms. Evidently, this jade-colored palm silhouette should be Lu Xiang's armor soul. However, what caused many people in the Emperor Pavilion to be shocked was that Zhuowen's second attack actually managed to force Lu Xiang's armor soul out. This was a completely one-sided suppression. Break! The blade aura flicked upwards and a sharp blade aura slashed out. The jade-like palm shadow was directly shattered. At the same time, Zhuowen's empty left hand formed a palm and was ready to attack. It was like a venomous snake that was secretly hunting in the dark. In an instant, it was imprinted on Lu Xiang's shoulder blade. Bang! A soft muffled sound rang out. Lu Xiang was repeatedly pushed back by the might of this palm. She spat out a trace of blood from her mouth, and her beautiful eyes were filled with astonishment. The people in the Emperor Pavilion looked at the 2 figures in the arena. One of them was miserably retreating, while the other stood proudly like a mountain. At this moment, the outcome of the battle had already been decided. All of you attacked together. This brat isn't simple. As Lu Xiang retreated, she suddenly roared at the 20+ members of the Emperor Pavilion behind her. Yes, the 20+ members of the Emperor Pavilion nodded their heads. Under the lead of Du Tao, they rushed towards Zhuowen one after another. At the same time, they surrounded Zhuowen in an extremely orderly manner. Looks like if I don't teach you guys a lesson, You won't be able to remember it. Zhuowen grinned. With a stomp of his foot, he bent his waist and shot out like a cannonball. The seven slaughter blade in his hand was wrapped in a terrifying killing aura, completely suppressing the surrounding space. Feeling the sudden increase in pressure, the expressions of the 20-plus members of the Emperor Pavilion changed. Terrifying yuan energy gushed out from their bodies in an attempt to counteract this terrifying pressure. Bang bang bang. Continuous collision sounds rang out. Zhuowen swung the seven slaughter blade in his right hand. The blunt back of the blade heavily slammed into the abdomen of three of the members. The terrifying strength caused the eyes of the three to protrude as their bodies involuntarily flew backwards. Attack him! Du Tao roared. Instantly, the remaining 10-plus members reacted and executed their own powerful attacks, joining forces to attack Zhuowen. Zhuowen's body turned sluggish, but he didn't show any signs of cowardice. With a twist of his right hand, the seven slaughter blades slashed out horizontally. The blade's edge slammed into the terrifying attacks of the 10-plus members of the Emperor Pavilion. First it was sluggish, then it directly penetrated through, breaking apart the 10-plus attacks. Swoosh! Zhuowen's momentum didn't decrease. With another stomp, the seven slaughter blade in his hand slashed out again. The blade energy permeated the air, and several more people were sent flying by Zhuowen, falling to the ground and losing the ability to fight. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Within the encirclement of Du Tao, Zhuowen wielded the seven slaughter blade. In less than 10 breaths of time, the encirclement of the 20-plus members of the Emperor Pavilion was completely destroyed, leaving behind only the pale-faced Du Tao, who continuously retreated. You stay behind as well. Zhuowen's gaze landed on Du Tao, causing the latter's hair to stand. An intense sense of danger rose in his heart. Run! Without saying a word, Du Tao directly followed the small path outside. With a stomp of his foot, he attempted to escape. You can't escape. Zhuowen stood up proudly. With a swing of the seven slaughter blade in his right hand, it turned into a black lightning bolt and swept towards Du Tao's back. Swoosh! A violent air-breaking sound came from Du Tao's back, causing an intense sense of danger to rise in the former's heart. With a furious roar, Du Tao turned around and stretched out his hands. Surging yuan power revolved in front of his body, attempting to block the seven slaughter blade that was shooting towards him. Clang! Unfortunately, Du Tao's defense only lasted for a moment before it collapsed inch by inch. He spat out a mouthful of blood and heavily smashed onto the ground. His body twitched and trembled, and his eyes were slightly unfocused. It was obvious that he had suffered serious injuries. Swoosh! Chapter 1077. Unlucky. What are you trying to do? Lu Xiang lifted her foot slightly and took a few steps back. Her pretty eyes were filled with caution. What do you think I am trying to do? Zhuowen grinned and instantly appeared in front of Lu Xiang. His left palm swept out and imprinted itself on her shoulder blade. A muffled groan sounded out as Lu Xiang spat out a mouthful of fresh blood and sat on the ground. Her pretty face was incomparably pale. Why don't you hand over all your contribution points? Otherwise, I can't guarantee your safety. Zhuowen slowly squatted down. His eyes were indifferent as he stared at Lu Xiang in front of him. There was not a trace of emotion in his voice. At the same time, the sharp blade of the seven-kill blade in his hand was inches away from Lu Xiang's pure white neck. This caused the latter's hair to involuntarily stand. Lu Xiang bit her lower lip. She finally compromised and handed over all her contribution points to Zhuowen. What caused Zhuowen to be a little surprised was that Lu Xiang really had quite a number of contribution points. There were actually a total of 70 to 80,000 contribution points. Jianan Gatha, Brother Imo and Xian Xing. The four of you can split the remaining 20 over people's contribution points. After collecting the contribution points from Lu Xiang, Zhuowen spoke to Imo Lingtian and the other three behind him. The four of them reacted and each of them took action. They snatched the contribution points from the 20 over members of the Emperor Pavilion that Zhuowen had beaten to the ground. After all, with Zhuowen around, these members of the Emperor Pavilion naturally did not dare to resist. After splitting the contribution points from the 20 over members of the Emperor Pavilion, Emo Lingtian, Jian Nan, and the other three were glowing with excitement. Their eyes were filled with excitement. The contribution points from these 20 over members of the Emperor Pavilion were extremely abundant. They actually had a total of nearly 400,000 contribution points. The four of them split the 400,000 contribution points equally. Each of them had around 100,000 contribution points. They had never earned so many contribution points before. Their eyes revealed an extremely rich excitement. We've really struck it rich this time. Jian Nan's face flushed red as he involuntarily muttered in excitement. The corners of Emo Lingtian's and the other two's mouths involuntarily curled into a smile. They were practically grinning from ear to ear. The harvest this time was enough to make up for all the missions they had risked their lives to complete within the academy. Zhuowen, can we go now? Lu Xiang's pretty face was filled with coldness as she spoke coldly to Zhuowen. Scram! After Zhuowen spat out these two words, he no longer paid any attention to Lu Xiang. Instead, he directly walked towards Emo Lingtian's group. Lu Xiang had only come here to humiliate herself. Zhuowen did not really care. In addition, they were not allowed to kill each other within the academy. Hence, Zhuowen did not intend to be ruthless. Most importantly, Zhuowen knew that the mastermind behind all this was not Lu Xiang. It should be Lu Xiang's elder brother Lu Qing, who was known as the third pavilion master of the Emperor Pavilion. This time, he let Lu Xiang go as a reminder to Lu Qing that he, Zhuowen, was not someone to be trifled with. If he provoked him, he would have to pay the corresponding price. Brother Zhua, so you've also come out of seclusion. However, your progress is a little fast. In just half a year, you've already reached the peak of the Golden Exalt realm. Moreover, judging from your aura, you're probably not far from breaking through to the Heavenly Exalt realm, right? Emo Lingtian and the other three took the initiative to welcome him. Among them, Emo Lingtian clicked his tongue in wonder. Yes, I'm just short of an opportunity to break through to the Heavenly Exalt realm. However, whether I can successfully break through will also depend on my luck. Zhuowen shook his head and said, from the initial stage of the Golden Exalt realm to the peak of the Golden Exalt realm, one only needed to be in an environment rich in energy and rely on a period of time. However, from the peak of the Golden Exalt realm to the initial stage of the Heavenly Exalt realm, this was a threshold that required opportunities, comprehension, and luck. Moreover, Zhuowen believed that if his cultivation could reach the Heavenly Exalt realm, his battle strength would probably not be afraid of the top 5 existences on the Outer Court Heavenly Exalt list. However, if he wanted to break through, he could not rush things. Everything had to be done slowly, so that when the conditions were right, success would follow naturally. Hearing this, Emo Lingtian and the other three were also a little moved. They knew very well that Zhuowen had only been in the sect for about 7 months. In such a short period of time, he had climbed from the Sovereign Realm to the peak of the Golden Exalt realm. His speed could not be said to be slow. Speaking of which, Gatha's progress is also very fast. She has already reached the late stage of the Sovereign Realm. After releasing the Armor Spirit, she is not even afraid of Golden Exalt realm warriors. As he spoke, Zhuowen's gaze landed on the delicate and pretty face of Gatha. His somewhat teasing words caused the latter's exquisite face to slowly reveal an alluring crimson color, just like a ripe red apple. Big brother Zhua, you must be joking. Compared to you, Gatha's progress is nothing. Gatha lowered her eyelids and said somewhat mockingly. Zhuowen smiled and did not dwell on this topic. Instead, he said in a low voice, do you know about the people from the inner court? We have also heard about it. Recently, the news about the people from the inner court has spread like wildfire in the academy. It would be difficult for us not to know about it. Emo Lingtian laughed involuntarily. In theory, all the students from the outer court have the qualifications to compete for the inner court's disciple recruitment this time. In reality, it is only a competition between the geniuses on the Heavenly Exalt list. The geniuses on the Heavenly Exalt list are the true monsters of the outer court. It is really too difficult for the other students to compete with these monsters. Xianxing suddenly opened her mouth and said, "Elder sister Xianxing is right. Since the people from the inner court have come to recruit disciples, there will not be many spots. Moreover, there are 32 spots on the heavenly exalt list. The remaining few spots will definitely come from these 32 spots. However, Big Brother Zhuo is also quite strong, and should have the opportunity to compete for the spot of the inner court's disciple." Jianan's gaze landed on Zhuowen as he spoke. He had a nearly blind worship for Zhuowen. It is still too early to make a conclusion. Although the people from the inner court have already arrived at the outer court, the purpose of this trip has not been announced. Even if they are really recruiting disciples, the number of spots, selection mechanism, etc., have not been confirmed. Zhuowen shook his head and spoke in a rational manner. "I feel that these will be announced in the next few days. At that time, there will definitely be some news within the academy. For now, we can only wait." Emo Lingtian nodded and said, "Zhuowen, there is one more thing that I have not told you. It is related to Palm Chui." Suddenly, Emo Lingtian opened his mouth again. "Palm Chui, what about it?" Zhuowen was startled. In his mind, he recalled the young man with the sword on his back, who had a surging fighting spirit in his eyes. Speaking of which, he had not seen Palm Chui for a long time. After all, he was the second-ranked new student. Palm Chui has joined the Emperor Pavilion. It seems that he has obtained quite a lot of benefits from the Emperor Pavilion. Moreover, he has always wanted to fight with you. After hesitating for a moment, Emo Lingtian finally opened his mouth and spoke. "Oh, he has joined the Emperor Pavilion?" Zhuowen was startled. A trace of surprise appeared in his eyes. However, it only appeared for a short while before he regained his calm. At the entrance of the quiet bamboo forest outside the new students' dormitory, many bruised and swollen new students were still pacing back and forth. Moreover, they would occasionally glance towards the depths of the bamboo forest. Previously, they were chased out by Lu Xiang and the others. If they were to enter the new students' dormitory without permission, they would definitely be beaten up. Therefore, these new students did not dare to enter immediately. That Zhuowen has been in there for quite a long time. "I wonder how he is now." Murmurs could be heard from the new students. This time around, Lu Xiang was leading a group of over 20 members from the Emperor Pavilion, and none of them were ordinary individuals. Although Zhuowen's reputation was not small, and his strength was not weak, he was after all a lone figure. This time around, he would definitely suffer some losses when facing the members of the Emperor Pavilion. "Look, someone is coming out from there. I wonder who it is. I feel that it is that Zhuowen. Although this Zhuowen is rumored to be a god, he is at most a golden sovereign. Moreover, it is difficult for two fists to fight against four hands. One of them is facing over 20 cultivators of the same level. There is even a heavenly sovereign expert among them. Thinking about it, it is not likely that he will win." That is also true. This Zhuowen can be considered to be somewhat unlucky. He has just returned, and he is already being taught a lesson by the Emperor Pavilion. The new students discussed spiritedly. However, their gazes were firmly fixed on the moving figure in the depths of the bamboo forest. They wanted to see who exactly the owner of this figure was. A somewhat miserable figure led a group of 20 people and walked out from the depths of the bamboo forest with a gloomy face. Moreover, the condition of these 20 over people was not good. Their noses were bruised and their faces were swollen. Their eyes were unfocused. Seeing this group of people, the new students were first startled. Soon after, they very tacitly descended into silence. This was because this group of people was not Zhuowen, Emo Lingtian, and the others that they had expected. It was actually the group of people from the Emperor Pavilion led by Lu Xiang. When their gazes landed on the somewhat miserable condition of this group of people, how could the new students not know that it was very likely that Lu Xiang's group had suffered quite a bit of a loss in the battle earlier? "What are you looking at? All of you get lost." Lu Xiang walked out of the bamboo forest and saw the strange gazes that the surrounding new students shot over. The gloominess in her beautiful eyes became denser, and she involuntarily cried out in a lovely voice. Her somewhat hoarse voice sounded exceptionally frightening. The new students retreated one after another like fearful tigers, opening up a smooth path for her. With a cold snort, the gloominess in Lu Xiang's eyes became denser. The hatred in her heart for Zhuowen also soared by several times. This had already happened twice. She had been defeated by that man twice. She was really unable to swallow this anger. Miss Lu Xiang, do you think we should talk to the third pavilion master about this matter? That Zhuowen is really too arrogant. If we allow him to continue acting so wantonly, I'm afraid that the reputation of our Emperor Pavilion will really be destroyed. Du Tao came to Lu Xiang's side and said in a low voice, "Humph. I have my own plans for this matter. I will not let it end like this." Lu Xiang softly snorted. She directly led the group of people and left the bamboo forest, leaving behind the new students who were whispering behind her. Looks like the final result is Zhuowen's victory. I really did not expect that Zhuowen would win against over 20 people. Chapter 1078. Letter of Challenge. The atmosphere in the room that was filled with flickering candlelight was faintly solemn. There were over a dozen chairs scattered around the room. These chairs were all filled with figures. However, there was a trace of fury in the eyes of these people. This is too much. This Zhuowen is really too arrogant. He actually dares to snatch the contribution points of our Emperor Pavilion members again. Moreover, he did not even let young lady Lu Xiang off. This fellow is detestable. At a corner, a man suddenly slammed his hand on the table beside his armrest and shouted furiously, "That's right. This Zhuowen has already snatched the contribution points of our Emperor Pavilion twice. If we allow this person to continue, how will the other students in the academy view our Emperor Pavilion? Where will the prestige of our Emperor Pavilion go?" The other people in the room also voiced their agreement one after another after this man's words sounded. Everyone's emotions were stirred up. At the leader's seat in the room, there was a black-haired and black-eyed young man wearing a long black robe. His right hand was gently placed on the table beside him. There was a black heavy spear on the table. This heavy spear was wrapped in a black cloth. The young man's right hand gently rubbed the tip of the spear. His eyes were deep, and it was impossible to see the exact expression on his face. "Big brother, this time around, you must not let that Zhuowen off. This fellow is really too arrogant and despotic. The contribution points of over 20 subordinates that I brought with me have all been snatched away. That is a total of over 400,000 contribution points." Lu Xiang slowly walked out from a dark corner of the room. Her pretty face was a little swollen. This caused her originally pretty appearance to be greatly affected. From the way Lu Xiang addressed him, the identity of the black-robed young man sitting at the leader's seat in the room was obvious. He should be the third pavilion master of the Emperor Pavilion, Lu Qing. All of you should also know that the second pavilion master, Di Shi, and the first pavilion master, Di Ba, have already entered a retreat in order to prepare for the upcoming in-name disciple competition. Currently, I am in charge of the Emperor Pavilion. Lu Qing's right hand, which was groping for the heavy spear, slowly came to a stop. His eyes, which contained a serene cold light, were placed on Lu Xiang, who was at the corner as he said, "This Zhuowen is really arrogant. However, I do not know what is wrong with the Fragrant Ink Pavilion. They are actually monitoring our movements at all times. If we rashly find trouble with Zhuowen, I'm afraid that Cheng Dong will appear again. It won't be easy to deal with Zhuowen." Lu Xiang's beautiful eyes changed slightly. She gritted her teeth and said, "What's going on with the Fragrant Ink Pavilion? That Zhuowen isn't a member of the Fragrant Ink Pavilion, so why is he protecting this Zhuowen? The Fragrant Ink Pavilion's first master seems to be paying some attention to this Zhuowen. I'm afraid that Zhuowen has some relationship with the first master," Lu Qing said indifferently. "Then what should we do? Could it be that they were going to allow Zhuowen to be arrogant? This brat has already put his finger on our nose twice. If we, the Emperor Pavilion, do not take any action, won't we become the laughingstock of others?" Lu Xiang said somewhat unwillingly. Lu Qing shook his head. A cold light flashed in his eyes as he said, "We naturally cannot allow this brat to be so arrogant." As he spoke, Lu Qing's eyes turned slightly, and landed on a dark corner in front of the room. The corners of his mouth curled into an arc as he said, "Palm tree, haven't you always wanted to challenge that Zhuowen? I'll give you a chance this time. Issue a challenge to that Zhuowen. The location will be at the Outer Academy Arena." A figure, which was as tall as a pine tree, was faintly discernible in the shadows. When he heard Lu Qing mention him, this figure slowly stepped forward. His white clothes were like falling snow, and he carried a long sword on his back. His eyes were filled with a sharp intent. "Third Pavilion Master, don't worry. I have already made an agreement with Zhuowen about the challenge. This time, I will definitely be able to defeat him." Palm Tree's voice was low, and his sharp eyes were filled with confidence. Half a year ago, Lu Qing had found him and recruited him into the Emperor Pavilion. He had also treated him as a key member of the Emperor Pavilion. Since joining the Emperor Pavilion, Palm Tree's strength had improved rapidly. Not only could he often cultivate and temper his meridians on the 10th floor of the cultivation tower, but he also learned many powerful cultivation methods and armor skills inside the Emperor Pavilion. His cultivation had also risen to the middle stage Heavenly Master in the past half a year. His strength was much stronger than before. Although Palm Tree's cultivation was similar to Lu Qing's, Lu Qing was in existence who was half a step into the late-stage Heavenly Master. He was an expert who could enter the late-stage Heavenly Master at any time. Therefore, although Palm Tree was confident now, he also knew that he was not qualified to challenge Lu Qing. However, Palm Tree was confident that if he was given some more time, he might be qualified to challenge Lu Qing. At that time, he would also be able to smoothly enter the Heavenly Master list and obtain supreme glory in the Outer Academy. Before entering the Heavenly Master list, I'll use Zhuowen as a stepping stone to warm up. Palm Tree thought to himself. If he was still the same as before and stayed in the freshman's dormitory, his vision would only become narrower and narrower. Moreover, his strength would not have increased to such a level. However, it was completely different now. In Palm Tree's eyes, Zhuowen, who had an abnormal battle strength, was probably nothing. Lu Qing nodded and said, "With your current strength, I'm afraid you don't need to fear Zhuowen at all. Moreover, if you issue a letter of challenge to Zhuowen, the people of the Fragrant Ink Pavilion will not be able to interfere." Palm Tree nodded, and immediately turned around and left the room. He was very confident. This Palm Tree is really arrogant. Lu Xiang frowned and said with some displeasure, "Haha, it's unavoidable for a genius to have some arrogance. If Palm Tree can join our Emperor Pavilion, it will be quite beneficial for our Emperor Pavilion. Next, let's wait and see for the letter of challenge." The corner of Lu Qing's mouth slightly curled as he said indifferently, This time, we must teach Zhuowen a lesson and let him know the consequences of offending our Emperor Pavilion." Lu Xiang clenched her fists and coldly snorted. At night, the sky was filled with stars. Not far from the freshman's dormitory, in a remote bamboo forest, a figure was walking with mysterious steps. He held a long black saber in his hand and slowly danced. His movements seemed slow, but were actually fast. There was a different kind of meaning behind it. Life destruction. A murmur came out from Zhuowen's mouth. Then the long saber in his right hand slashed out horizontally. Instantly, a destructive aura gushed out from the long saber, and the surrounding bamboo forest withered under the destructive aura. Slowly coming to a stop, Zhuowen's eyes revealed a look of contemplation. He muttered in a low voice, "The first move of the Massacre Annihilation Saber technique, life destruction. It's really mysterious. I can't possibly grasp the essence of that destructive aura." Back then, when the blood-clothed monk slashed out the life destruction with his spiritual sense, its power had really shocked Zhuowen. That slash was extremely stunning and contained the aura to destroy all living things. If God or Buddha blocked its path, it would kill Buddha. It was as if it had interpreted all the mysteries of slaughter in the world. The power that the blood-clothed monk had unleashed was also extremely terrifying. Under the power of the life destruction, Supreme Jin and Supreme Lan were unable to resist at all. They were instantly killed, and their lives were severed. The Massacre Annihilation Saber technique is an Emperor Saber technique. Moreover, it's an advanced Emperor Saber technique. Now that your cultivation level is not high enough, it's naturally not easy for you to fully comprehend it. You still need to take it slow. Xiao Hei's voice rang out in Zhuowen's mind. You're right. This can't be rushed. Zhuowen nodded. Then, a cold light flashed in his eyes. He stared at the dark depths of the bamboo forest in front of him, and said indifferently, You've been there for a long time, haven't you? Why are you acting so sneakily? What's the matter? As soon as he said this, the atmosphere in the bamboo forest became a little stagnant. A gentle breeze blew past, blowing up the fallen leaves on the ground. Thud, thud, thud. The sound of footsteps slowly rang out. In the bleak autumn wind, a figure slowly walked out from the depths of the bamboo forest. His tall and straight figure was like a peerless sharp sword. His entire body emitted a fierce aura. The figure came to a complete stop when he was 10 meters away from Zhuowen. A pair of sharp eyes stared at Zhuowen as he said with a faint smile, Brother Zhuo, it has been a long time since we last met. Your strength has improved quite quickly. Looking at the figure in front of him, who was full of sharpness, Zhuowen's eyes turned cold. He smiled and said, Brother Palm Tree, you're not bad either. You've probably gained more than me in the past 6 months, right? The figure in the depths of the bamboo forest was none other than Palm Tree, who had come out from the headquarters of the Emperor Pavilion. As soon as he came out, he came to the new students' dormitory to look for Zhuowen. I don't dare to say whether it's great or not. It's not just a matter of words. We'll only know after we try it out. Palm Tree shook his head and said with a faint smile, Oh, Brother Palm Tree, you mean? Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and said in a cold voice, Whoosh. Palm Tree flicked his finger. Suddenly, a black figure flew towards Zhuowen. Zhuowen stretched out his right hand and caught the black figure in his hand. He turned his hand over and discovered that the black figure's true appearance was actually an envelope. On the surface of the envelope, the word battle was written in calligraphy. Battle letter? Zhuowen was startled and muttered in a low voice, Brother Zhuo. Back then, after the freshman reward, I Palm Tree said that the two of us would have another battle. And in this battle, I Palm Tree will take back the first place that belongs to me. Palm Tree said in a clear voice, Emperor Pavilion's Lu Qing's idea? Zhuowen sneered. Palm Tree's gaze was calm and said, Think what you want. I've already sent the battle letter. 7 days later, I'll be waiting for you at the arena. If you don't come, then this battle between you and me will be considered as forfeiting, and your title as the new student will change hands. Also, even if you refuse, it's useless because the Emperor Pavilion will do its best to publicize this battle letter in the coming days. I believe Brother Zhuo won't not come. Zhuowen suddenly smiled and said, Do you feel proud to be called a dog of the Emperor Pavilion? I accept this battle letter. 7 days later, I Zhuowen will definitely come. Hearing Zhuowen call him a dog of the Emperor Pavilion, Palm Tree's gaze froze. However, he didn't flare up. He only looked deeply at Zhuowen and said, At that time, I'll let you know that the gap between us has unknowingly widened by a large distance. Now, you can slowly use your tongue to win. Chapter 1079. Chen Exine 3 days slowly passed. When the first ray of sunlight fell on the morning of the 4th day, Zhuowen slowly pushed open the window. 3 days had passed and Zhuowen was prepared to head to the arcane tower to look for Grandmaster Lan Miao. As he walked out of the new students' dormitory, Zhuowen discovered that many new students were pointing at him and whispering to each other along the way. This phenomenon caused Zhuowen to frown slightly. He did not understand what was going on. When he walked out of the entrance of the bamboo forest, a shout sounded from the front. Big Brother Zhuo, you have finally come out. In front of him, Jianan excitedly rushed in front of Zhuowen. He was panting and beads of sweat flowed down his forehead. Jianan, what's wrong? Zhuowen asked with a frown. Jianan looked at Zhuowen strangely and said softly, Big Brother Zhuo, don't tell me you didn't go out at all these 3 days? Zhuowen nodded. He looked straight at Jianan and said, What's wrong? Did something happen during these 3 days? At this point, Jianan's eyes revealed a trace of haze. He said, Big Brother Zhuo, I heard that Palmde of the Emperor Pavilion has sent you a letter of challenge and plans to challenge you in the fighting arena 4 days later. This news has spread like wildfire. Now the entire academy knows about it. Hearing this, Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. It seemed that what Palmde said 3 days ago about the Emperor Pavilion spreading the news was true. It had only been 3 days and news of the challenge had already spread throughout the entire outer academy. Zhuowen could completely imagine that when the challenge began 4 days later, it would definitely attract countless people. At that time, the fighting arena would definitely be a grand occasion. Looks like the Emperor Pavilion intends to make me, Zhuowen, suffer a crushing defeat in front of the entire academy. Is this the Emperor Pavilion's Yangwei? Zhuowen coldly said in a low voice. It should be. This Palmde is really a traitor. He is clearly a member of us new students, but he joined the Emperor Pavilion that persecutes us new students. Now he even intends to help the Emperor Pavilion deal with you, big brother Zhua. Jianan said somewhat angrily, but Zhuowen shook his head and said with a smile, everyone has their own aspirations. Although Palm is a new student, he isn't one of us. We don't have the qualifications to talk about which force he joins. However, he intends to use me, Zhuowen, to establish his prestige. I'm afraid he chose the wrong person. Big brother Zhua, are you sure you can handle Palm Tree? It is said that this Palm man's strength has increased very quickly in the past half a year. Not only has his cultivation reached the middle stage of the heavenly exalted realm, his strength has also become the number 1 person under the 3 great pavilion masters in the Emperor Pavilion. In the Emperor Pavilion, he can be said to be like the sun in the midday sky. Jianan said a bit worriedly. Don't worry. Since I was able to defeat Palm once, I can defeat him a second time. Zhuowen suddenly laughed. I believe in brother Zhua. Big brother Zhua. Something big happened in the past 3 days. It's about the people from the inner courtyard. Jianan's face flushed red, and he was slightly excited. Obviously, what he was about to say next would be rather exciting. Zhuowen's heart moved, and he took the initiative to ask, what is it? He knew that a large part of the purpose of the people from the inner courtyard this time was to recruit nominal disciples. If it was true, it would be quite beneficial for Zhuowen to enter the inner courtyard in advance. Therefore, Zhuowen was so sensitive to the news of the people from the inner courtyard. Yesterday, the dean released the news that the people from the inner courtyard this time are from the Sky Capital Peak, one of the 9 peaks of the inner courtyard. They are here to recruit nominal disciples into the Sky Capital Peak. Jianan said rather solemnly. Is there a limit to the number of nominal disciples? Zhuowen asked. Jianan shook his head and said, there doesn't seem to be a limit. It is said that as long as the outer courtyard disciples are able to complete the requirements set by the people from the Sky Capital Peak, they will be able to be recruited as nominal disciples. Oh, the requirements set by the Sky Capital Peak? Did the dean mention the requirements set by the people from the Sky Capital Peak? Zhuowen asked again. Yes, it is said that there are a few requirements to become nominal disciples. It is said that the first one is to obtain a trace of the island's source energy from the other islands in the Sea of Misery. Only the disciples who complete this requirement have the qualifications to carry out the next requirement set by the Sky Capital Peak. Jianan continued. Island source energy? What is that? Zhuowen revealed a puzzled expression. He had never heard of this so-called island source energy. Jianan shrugged helplessly and said, I am not too sure what the island source energy is either. However, it is said that the island source energy is the source energy of the islands in the Sea of Misery. It is said that it can increase a cultivator's aptitude. Moreover, all the islands in the Sea of Misery basically release their source energy once a year. This time, the source energy will be released half a year later. Therefore, if you want to complete the first requirement, you will have to complete it after half a year. Oh, it is actually half a year later. Looks like there is still quite a lot of time. Jianan, I still have some matters to attend to, so I will take my leave first. I will properly investigate the island source energy after I complete the matters at hand. Zhuowen patted Jianan's shoulder and spoke in a slightly apologetic manner. It's fine. Big brother Zhua, just do what you need to do. There are still 4 days before the battle with the palm tree. Big brother Zhua, you cannot lose to the people from the Emperor's pavilion. You must ruthlessly crush their spirit and avenge us new students. Jianan waved his fists and spoke in an extremely confident manner. Don't worry. I naturally know this. I will take my leave first. After bidding farewell, Zhuowen parted ways with Jianan and headed straight for the Arcana Tower. At the same time, Zhuowen also took out his Arcana Master's robe. After being taken in as Master Lan Miao's disciple, Lu Wei had naturally obediently handed the green robe to Zhuowen. After putting on the green robe, Zhuowen entered the plaza in front of the Arcana Tower. He followed the white marble path in the center of the plaza and directly entered the Arcana Tower. Because he was wearing the green robe, Zhuowen was able to move freely within the Arcana Tower. When he arrived at the 3rd floor, a wave of noise immediately attracted his attention. He saw that there were quite a few yellow-robed Arcana Masters in the center of the hall. Rather intense mental energy undulations could be faintly felt within the encirclement. Clearly, this was a clash between some Arcana Masters due to some conflict. Zhuowen was never one to meddle in other people's business. He merely glanced indifferently at the crowd before directly walking towards the stairs leading to the 4th floor. Trash as expected. Even though you have become Master Lan Miao's disciple in name, you are still trash. Huang Qin, don't think that you can sit back and relax just because you have Zhuowen. My big brother Chen Xian can crush him with a single finger. A wild and arrogant laughter was transmitted from the crowd. Zhuowen's right leg, which had originally stepped onto the stairs, paused for a moment. Immediately, he placed it down once again. His densely cold gaze was shot towards the middle of the 3rd level, where the crowd had surrounded him. There were 3 figures in the center of the encirclement. These 3 figures were faintly divided into 2 sides. One side only had one person in yellow robes, and his eyes were filled with resentment. On the other side were 2 people. One was in green robes, and his eyes were filled with arrogance. The other was in green robes, and had his hands crossed over his chest. His chin was raised high, and his eyes were narrowed. It was as if nothing in his surroundings was worthy of his attention. I really did not expect that Chen Gang would actually bring his big brother Chen Xian here. Huang Qin is really unlucky. It's not just unlucky. Although Huang Qin has been accepted as a disciple by Master Lan Miao, a mere disciple in name is not valued by the master. Chen Gang also saw this point, which is why he provoked Huang Qin like this. Have you forgotten? Chen Xian is one of Master Tusida's official disciples. His status is not something that a disciple in name like Huang Qin can compare to. Chen Gang is even more unscrupulous. The surrounding crowd began to whisper. Their gazes were filled with respect and fear, as they looked at the unperturbed green-robed man with his hands crossed over his chest. Chen Gang, don't go too far. Huang Qin's face was flushed red, and his eyes were filled with resentment. This Chen Gang actually pestered him, and came looking for trouble again. He was really like a sticky candy that could not be shaken off. Humph! Hurry up and tell me the whereabouts of Zhuowen. That kid injured my brother, so he has to pay a price. Otherwise, wouldn't my brother be bullied by anyone? Chen Xian, who was standing behind Chen Gang, finally opened his narrowed eyes and said indifferently to Huang Qin, I don't know the whereabouts of brother Zhua. It's useless for you to ask me. Huang Qin coldly snorted. Chen Xian clenched his right hand, and his gaze became slightly gloomy. He said indifferently, You're a little sentimental. Since you won't tell me, I'll beat you until you do. As he spoke, a terrifying mental energy storm swept out from behind Chen Xian. The terrifying mental energy spread out like ripples in water, causing many of the surrounding onlookers to retreat, their eyes filled with awe. Huang Qin also retreated a few steps, his face slightly pale. Chen Xian was a 5th grade Arcana Master. He was not someone a mere perfect grade 3rd grade Arcana Master could compare to. Chen Xian, Master Mufeng has long since stipulated that private fights are not allowed in the Arcana Tower. As Master Mufeng's disciple, you actually knowingly broke the law. Huang Qin's voice was filled with fear. You say that I knowingly broke the law? How laughable. Who are you and who am I? I don't have to abide by the rules that you have to abide by. Chen Xian smiled coldly and walked towards Huang Can step by step. The mental energy that spread out from him became more and more terrifying, and the pressure became more and more frightening. Huang Can's face became even paler, and he continuously retreated. As Huang Can retreated, the surrounding Arcana masters also retreated. They didn't want to become Huang Can's meat shield. They knew very well how terrifying Chen Xian was, and didn't want to be dragged into this mess. Boom! Chen Xian stomped his foot, and the terrifying mental energy storm swept towards Huang Can like a spinning top. The might of the heavens surged, causing many of the surrounding onlookers to change their expressions. Huang Can's right hand touched his forehead, and he gritted his teeth and released his mental energy. Unfortunately, his mental energy was completely incomparable to Chen Xian's. It was extremely weak. Haha, a speck of light dares to compete with the sun and moon? How laughable! Chen Xian sneered, and the mental energy storm came crashing down. The mental energy released by Huang Can was extremely weak, and it directly shattered. Huang Can's face turned pale. He stared at the enormous mental energy storm in the sky, and his throat involuntarily trembled. Boom! Chapter 1080. Mental Energy Competition. Who is it? Chen Xian's eyes were filled with astonishment as he watched the mental energy storm being shattered by the blade aura. Many of the surrounding people did not expect that the mental energy storm released by Chen Xian would actually be broken. Following Chen Xian's line of sight, the crowd's gazes landed on a tall figure not far away. Who are you? Chen Xian stared at the figure and coldly asked. Weren't you looking for me just now? Why are you asking me who I am now? Zhuowen mocked. Zhuowen? Chen Xian's eyes narrowed slightly. Brother Zhua. Huang Can also saw Zhuowen slowly walking over, and could not help but exclaim in surprise. It is said that Grandmaster Lan Miao, who has never accepted a disciple before, has made an exception and accepted a disciple because of you. However, from what I can see, you have not shown much talent for mental energy, but your martial talent is not bad. However, I think you have come to the wrong place. This is the Arcana Tower, not the Cultivation Tower. Chen Xian crossed his arms and mocked. The blade aura Zhuowen had unleashed just now was quite powerful, so Chen Xian was faintly afraid in his heart. But even more so, there was a trace of contempt. After all, the Arcana Tower only recruited arcane geniuses. What was the use of having such high martial talent? It would not work in the Arcana Tower. Moreover, the Arcana Masters in the Arcana Tower all looked down on cultivators. They believed that cultivators were crude people who only knew how to fight, unlike the elegant and carefree Arcana Masters. Are you done with your nonsense? Zhuowen only stared quietly at Chen Xian, and indifferently spat out these words. The corners of Chen Xian's mouth stiffened, and his gaze immediately darkened. Chen Gang could not help but step forward and point at Zhuowen. Don't think that you are so great just because you were accepted as Grandmaster Lan Miao's last disciple. Your mental energy is merely at the peak of grade 4. There is a qualitative difference between that and grade 5. I'm afraid that you used some underhanded method to make Grandmaster Lan Miao misjudge you and accept a piece of trash like you. You're calling me trash? I remember that you were defeated by me 3 days ago, right? Now you, a defeated opponent, are pointing at my nose and saying that I'm trash. Don't you feel that you're like a jumping clown and extremely laughable? Zhuowen said indifferently. In front of my big brother, you're just a piece of trash. Your martial strength is indeed not bad. But do you dare to compete with my big brother using spiritual power? As Master Lan Miao's disciple, I think that you won't withdraw because of this, right? Chen Gang gave a cold snort and quibbled. Are you saying that you want me to compete with your brother, Chen Xian, in terms of spiritual power? Zhuowen suddenly asked in a strange tone. Even Huang Can's expression was somewhat strange. He knew that Zhuowen's spiritual type ability was terrifying, having reached the great circle of the 5th stage. Although Chen Xian was also a 5th stage Arcana Master, he was only at the lesser stage of the 5th stage. The gap between him and Zhuowen was not small. However, this guy Chen Gang actually proposed that Zhuowen and Chen Xian compete in spiritual power. It was no wonder that Zhuowen and Huang Can both revealed strange expressions. However, this kind of expression was only revealed by Zhuowen and Huang Can. Everyone else's eyes were filled with ridicule, and the target of their ridicule was naturally Zhuowen. In the entire arcane tower, only Master Lan Miao and Huang Can knew that Zhuowen's spiritual power had reached the great circle of the 5th stage. The others simply did not know. At that time, Zhuowen's spiritual power on the 4th floor was also around the 4th stage. He mainly relied on his martial strength to defeat Chen Gang and Lu Li. So Chen Gang mistakenly thought that Zhuowen's spiritual power was actually only strong in martial strength, but his spiritual power was actually ordinary. What? You don't dare? Chen Gang raised his chin high. He naturally saw the strange expression on Zhuowen's face, but he believed that the reason why Zhuowen revealed such an expression was actually a sign of a guilty conscience. After all, in his opinion, Zhuowen's spiritual power definitely did not exceed the 4th stage. There was quite a large gap between him and his big brother Chen Xian. Chen Xian silently watched all of this, the corners of his mouth full of a sneer, but he interjected, "You don't dare?" It seems that the disciple recruited by Master Lan Miao isn't much. Not only is his talent lacking, but he is also as timid as a mouse. How disappointing. That's right. Since you don't dare, then get out of the arcane tower as soon as possible, lest you tarnish Master Lan Miao's reputation. Chen Gang took the opportunity to add fuel to the fire, ridiculing and ridiculing. The mocking looks in the eyes of quite a few people in the surroundings became even more intense. News of Master Lan Miao accepting a disciple had spread like wildfire in the arcane tower over the past 3 days. Everyone had different opinions regarding Zhuowen's spiritual power, but that Chen Gang swore that Zhuowen was a 4th stage arcana master. Thus, everyone believed this to be true, believing that Zhuowen was really a 4th stage arcana master. There were even quite a few people who were envious of Zhuowen's luck. A 4th stage arcana master was actually accepted as a disciple by Master Lan Miao. This was a treatment that many 4th stage arcana masters did not have. Of course, if they knew Zhuowen's true spiritual power cultivation, they would probably be taken aback. Did I say that I don't dare? Since you want to compete with me, I, Zhuowen, will naturally be happy to accompany you. Zhuowen slowly stepped forward and said indifferently. Chen Xian and Chen Gang's expressions froze. They did not expect that Zhuowen would actually agree so readily. They faintly felt that something was wrong. However, since it's a competition, there must be a prize. Otherwise, this competition would be too monotonous. Zhuowen said with a slight smile. Chen Xian frowned slightly. This Zhuowen's performance was a little too indifferent. Not only did he not reject this spiritual power competition, he even wanted a prize. Although he faintly felt that something was wrong, he was still very confident in his spiritual power. Big brother, this kid is definitely bluffing. Don't be fooled by him. Isn't it just a prize? We'll just give it to him. This person is Master Lan Miao's disciple, and you are Master Tusida's disciple. If you defeat and ruthlessly humiliate this kid, Master Tusida will definitely praise you, Chen Gang said to Chen Xian in a low voice. Master Tusida was also one of Master Mufang's 4 direct disciples. However, his relationship with Master Lan Miao was not very good. It could be said that the two of them often fought openly and secretly. However, because Master Lan Miao's cultivation was higher, Master Tusida would often suffer some losses. However, if Chen Xian could defeat and ruthlessly humiliate Master Lan Miao's newly accepted disciple, he would undoubtedly gain Master Tusida's favor. Thinking of this, Chen Xian was somewhat tempted. He nodded and said to Zhuowen, "What do you want as a prize?" "A grade 5 origin formation." Zhuowen indifferently spat out these words. Whoosh! As soon as these words were spoken, the surroundings immediately burst into an uproar. This Zhuowen was really asking for an exorbitant price. He actually wanted to use a grade 5 origin formation as a wager. This thing was extremely precious, even to a grade 5 arcana master. It was already very good for a grade 5 arcana master, to possess a grade 5 origin formation. Moreover, they would treat it like a treasure. Who would have the courage to use it as a wager? A grade 5 origin formation? Do you have such a thing on you? Chen Xian's pupil shrank. Soon after, he asked somewhat suspiciously. With a flick of his finger, Zhuowen immediately summoned the Greater Infinity Sword formation. Rays of sword light surrounded his body. Soon after, he stared at Chen Xian and said, "What do you think? You actually have a grade 5 origin formation?" Chen Gang also began to realize that something was wrong. This Zhuowen actually had a grade 5 origin formation on him. Could it be that Master Lan Miao had given him a gift for becoming his disciple? "It's your turn. Take out your grade 5 origin formation," Zhuowen said indifferently. Chen Xian's eyes flickered. He sneered and said, "It seems that Master Lan Miao treats you quite well. Clearly, his mental strength is only at grade 4. But he actually gave you a grade 5 origin formation." As he spoke, Chen Xian waved his sleeve. Rays of starlight formed a ring-shaped galaxy that surrounded Chen Xian's body. The sparkling starlight looked mysterious and distant. Grade 5 origin formation, Milky Way 9 heavens. Zhuowen nodded. Soon after he asked, "How do you want to compete in mental strength?" "It's very simple. Meet force with force. Whoever has the stronger mental strength will be the winner," Chen Xian said indifferently. His entire body was wrapped in mental strength. His green robe fluttered in the wind under this mental strength. Chen Xian also slowly floated up under the effect of his mental strength. It was as if he was floating in the air. This method is simple and practical. Not bad. Zhuowen nodded. The mental strength in his Naiwen palace also slowly gushed out and wrapped around his body. This brat wants to meet force with force with force. He is simply asking for humiliation. Chen Gang's mouth was full of a cold smile. He looked at Zhuowen with a gaze full of ridicule. The surrounding people also stared at Zhuowen, who was also floating in the air. The mental strength emitted by Zhuowen was indeed not strong. It was only at grade 4. So where did this brat get the confidence to compete with Chen Xian in mental strength? Huang Qin was startled at first. Soon after, his eyes revealed a look of understanding. He softly said, "Zhuowen really knows how to play. Grade 4? Hee, I thought you had some kind of trump card. I didn't expect you to still be a grade 4 arcana master. Let me ask you, what do you have to compete with me?" Chen Xian's voice became incomparably strong under the influence of his yuan power. It was also mixed with a trace of contempt and disdain. "What do I have to compete with you? You will find out very soon." When Zhuowen rose to the same height as Chen Xian, his right hand touched the space between his eyebrows again. An even more surging mental strength rushed out like a tide. If Zhuowen's mental strength was like a trickle just now, this sudden surge of mental strength was like an endless river, flowing far and wide. When this mental strength completely appeared in the living room, Chen Xian's face completely froze. Not only Chen Xian, but Chen Gang and the surrounding onlookers also fell into varying degrees of stupefaction. This lad's mental power is actually at the initial level 5? Chen Gang muttered to himself, his face completely stiff. "I see. I was wondering why Master Lan Miao suddenly accepted a disciple. So you are also an initial grade 5 arcana master." Chen Xian's face was slightly gloomy. This time he had miscalculated. He did not expect Zhuowen to hide his mental strength. Only a small success? A smile appeared at the corner of Zhuowen's mouth. Then an even more terrifying mental strength rushed out. It was a rushing river just now, but now it was a vast ocean. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.